Hey guys, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope all of you are doing fine. And yes, this is the next part of Ben with Gwen. A story about how Ben and Gwen's relationship evolves over the next 4 years following their summer trip. So let's start without any delay. Let's start this great series. March, Year 4, Part 4. You know, for a girl who can't shapeshift to make her own outfits, you sure don't have a whole lot of clothes, Lucy said as she went through Gwen's closet. What are you talking about? Gwen asked, sitting on her bed and watching Lucy. I've already got way more clothes than I'll ever need. Lucy scoffed. You should take a look at my closet sometime. Gwen fidgeted nervously as Lucy pulled something out and held it up to examine it. Lucy, do you really think this is that important? Of course it is. She insisted. It's your first date. Don't you wanna look good? Well, yeah, but I can guarantee you he's just gonna wear a t-shirt and cargo pants. Ooh, how about a dress? Lucy suggested, ignoring Gwen's speculation. You look so pretty in a dress. And from the way Ben was looking at you at the dance, I'd say he's into it too. Gwen blushed and smiled a little. Maybe, but we're gonna be spending all day together, and probably moving around a lot. Good point. So maybe not a dress. But we'll still give you something pretty, Lucy said. Ooh, I got it. How about this red top, and you can wear this black thing over it, and then these'll go well with these pants, and these black shoes. As Lucy spoke, she pulled several articles of clothing out of Gwen's closet and set them down. Come on, what do you think? Seems all right, Gwen said, standing up and looking over the outfit Lucy had laid out for her. It had looked like she was simply pulling things out of the closet at random, but apparently Lucy really knew what she was doing. Great. Lucy skipped over to Gwen's bed and sat down, leaning back to prop herself up with her arms and crossing her legs casually. Gwen held the outfit against herself in front of the mirror. Nodding, she set the clothes down again and grabbed the hem of her shirt. Before she started to pull it off, she turned to see Lucy staring at her, smiling expectantly. Gwen stopped what she was doing, giving Lucy a look that silently said, "Aren't you gonna leave?" "Pfft, it's nothing I haven't seen at the beach," Lucy said. Gwen knit her brow. That's not true. I don't wear bikinis. Which is a damn shame, Lucy said with a smirk. Gwen shook her head, turning her back to Lucy. She decided that quickly changing in front of her would be easier than convincing her to leave. Trying not to let the other girl's presence bother her, she pulled off her shirt and dropped it to the floor while hoping Lucy wouldn't make any comments about her bra strap. Then she unzipped the pants she was wearing and slid them down. Darn, Lucy's voice came from behind her. Gwen stood up straight and spun around. You know, I can still make you wait outside, she said in annoyance. Lucy put her hand to her chin and looked Gwen up and down. You might wanna do something with the underwear, too. He won't be seeing it. Well, not with that attitude. Lucy giggled. Her face red, Gwen turned back around and grabbed the pants Lucy had laid out for her, quickly pulling them on. When she was finished dressing, she stepped back in front of the mirror. How do I look? She asked uncertainly. Lucy walked up behind her and started adjusting Gwen's outfit. You look gorgeous, Lucy assured her. I mean it. And Ben's gonna think so too. Gwen blushed at that, meeting Lucy's eyes in the mirror. Are you nervous? Lucy asked gently. Gwen hesitated for a moment, then she nodded. A little, she said. It was so hard getting to this point. I don't wanna screw it up now. Don't worry. Everything'll work out fine, Lucy assured her. Gwen was unconvinced. She looked her reflection up and down again, suddenly perceiving a dozen flaws she hadn't noticed before. Hey, Lucy said, turning Gwen to the side and stepping in front of her. The most important thing to remember is that this isn't some kind of performance or competition. You don't need to impress Ben. Just relax and have fun. Pretend you're just hanging out with him, like you always do. Gwen figured Lucy really knew what she was talking about. After all, before she lived in Bellwood, Lucy used to tell her about the guys and girls she'd been dating all the time whenever they video chatted. But remembering this caused Gwen to realize something. You've dated a lot, haven't you? Gwen asked. Yep. Lucy said, putting her hands on her hips and nodding proudly. I know all about this stuff. Trust me. Have you dated anyone since you moved to Bellwood? She asked. Gwen spent a lot of time with Lucy both in and out of school, but she wasn't with her all the time, so she considered it possible that Lucy might have been dating someone she didn't know about. However, if that were the case, she figured Lucy would have told her about it by now. Lucy froze for a second, as if she wasn't prepared to be asked something like that, but she quickly shook it off. Nope. Why not? Gwen asked, confused. All the guys at school are crazy about you. Lucy giggled. No, just the ones who aren't crazy about you. Gwen smiled and rolled her eyes. But seriously, though. Why not? Lucy hesitated before she spoke again. Dunno. I've been a busy gal. Between the move, hanging out with you and Ben, school, pottery, violin, TV, video games, I haven't really had time for it. Gwen nodded like she understood, then knit her brow. You play violin? Yaha. Lucy nodded. Did I not tell you that? No, I had no idea. Lucy shrugged. Guess I don't tell you everything. Gwen studied her for a moment. What she'd just said could have meant a lot of things. Well, anyway, if you're ever interested in somebody at school, let me know. I don't know what help I can actually be, but since you're helping me with this, I'd like to return the favor sometime. Pfft, don't worry about me, Lucy said. Today's about you and Ben. Gwen smiled and nodded, then walked back over to her bed and sat down. Ben will be here soon, Lucy said. I know. I'll leave the house with you guys so it'll look like it's the three of us hanging out today. But after that, I'll leave you two alone. Gwen nodded. Thanks. Don't mention it. Although the thought of you two on a date is just so cute. I really wanna see it sometime. Gwen laughed. It's not like we'll never hang out as the three of us ever again. I know, but you won't be as lovey-dovey when I'm around. Ben and I aren't exactly the lovey-dovey type to begin with. Lucy grinned. We'll see. Gwen rolled her eyes. There was a knock at the door. Girls. Frank's voice came through the door. Yeah, Dad. Gwen called back. Ben's here, he said. We'll be right down, Lucy said. Gwen felt another wave of nervousness come over her. It must have been showing on her face because Lucy held out her hand, smiling softly. Ready? Lucy asked. Gwen didn't feel ready, but she nodded anyway, taking Lucy's hand as she stood up. Together, they left her room and headed down the hall. When they reached the stairs, they could see Ben waiting for them at the bottom. Hey, Ben. Lucy greeted him excitedly, running down the stairs. Ben didn't respond. He stared past her even when she got to the bottom and stood right next to him. Gwen stopped halfway down the stairs, locking eyes with him. Lucy turned around and noticed what was happening, then held a hand up in front of her mouth and made a smug expression. Careful now. Without a map, you might get lost in each other's gorgeous green eyes. Ben and Gwen simultaneously shook themselves out of their daze, looking away from each other and blushing. Lucy giggled as Gwen continued down the steps. Ben cleared his throat nervously. Hey, dweeb, he said. Gwen smiled warmly. Hey, doofus. Oh, so cute. Lucy chimed in. Pshaw. Ben and Gwen both turned to Lucy and shushed her. Gwen's parents were in the house, so she was nervous about Lucy saying anything suspicious. Lucy giggled. Sorry, couldn't help it. Come on, let's get going. She skipped over to the front door and opened it. Bye, Frank. Bye, Natalie. She called out. Goodbye, kids. Frank's voice came from another room. Bye, Uncle Frank. Ben joined in as he and Gwen followed Lucy out the door. I'll be back later tonight, Dad, Gwen said. Together, the three of them walked towards the center of town. Ben and Gwen walked side by side, while Lucy skipped in circles around them. So, what are you gonna do today? Lucy asked. Long walk on the beach. Romantic candlelit dinner. Cheesy rom-com movie date. Ben and Gwen looked at each other. We didn't really, I don't know where we'd get a beach, but, Lucy stopped skipping in front of them, causing Ben and Gwen to stop in their tracks. She leaned in, bringing her face close to theirs. Tee-hee. Don't worry, I'm sure you little lovebirds can figure it out without me. Reached into her pocket, she pulled out a folded-up piece of paper. Welp, I've still got a whole bunch of other people to annoy today, she said, unfolding the paper and looking it over. I'll be around town pretty much all day, so call me if you need anything. Bye. She blew them a kiss, then turned and skipped away. Bye, Lucy. See ya. After watching Lucy disappear from view, Gwen froze. They were alone again. On a date. This is so weird. She turned her head and saw Ben was staring at her. You look nice, he said, although she could tell he was trying to say more than that. You look pretty much the same as always, Gwen said with a smirk. You mean damn good looking. Ben said, smiling with a look of mock superiority. Gwen laughed. You wish, doofus. I was this close to making you wear a bag on your head today. Good. Woulda saved me from having to look at you, Ben countered, making them both laugh. Gwen's earlier guess had ended up being right. Ben hadn't exactly put much effort into his appearance the way Lucy had wanted her to, although his hair looked a bit less messy than normal. Did he actually comb it? There was a brief silence as Gwen tried to think of how to proceed. Ben chuckled lightly. Man, this is so weird. Tell me about it, Gwen agreed. I honestly never thought I'd get this far. Ben scratched the back of his head. Well, since we are here, what do you wanna do today? Gwen smiled. Everything. By everything it turns out Gwen meant she wanted to do all the things she and Ben normally did when they hung out together, plus some version of the things Lucy had suggested. Instead of going for a long walk on the beach, they went for a walk through the park. There, they found a soccer ball and played keep away with it for a while. After that, they went to the arcade and had their usual competition with as many games as they could. Then they got something to eat. It wasn't a romantic, candlelit dinner, but pizza was good enough for both of them. Of course, they ended up tipping 100% because they both insisted on being the one to pay for it. And at the end of it all, they went to see a movie. To an outside observer, their date wouldn't have looked any different than most other days they'd spent together in the past. However, for the two of them, things felt very different. There was something between them now, something that seemed like it had been there for a long time. Neither of them had ever been willing to acknowledge it before, but now they had, and it felt great. As Ben sat in his seat watching the movie, the situation felt very familiar to him. Almost as soon as the movie had started, Gwen had leaned over to rest her head on his shoulder, so he had wrapped his arm around her to help them both get more comfortable. Now, as the movie was almost over, they were still in that position. Glancing down at her face, Ben saw she had the most contented smile on her face, looking happy and completely at ease. Wow! They'd sat like this together 1,000 times before. Quite often, when they found themselves alone at night in the rust bucket or at one of their houses, this was how they would sit when they started to get tired. Before, Ben had always told himself that it was just because it was comfortable, and it didn't mean anything beyond that. Looking back, he knew how obvious of a lie that was. If that were the case, they wouldn't have freaked out and scrambled to get away from each other whenever Max or one of their parents walked in on them like that. But now, even though there were other people in the theater, no one they knew was around and nobody was paying any attention to them. They were free to enjoy the moment as much as they wanted. Before long, the movie was over. As the end credits began to scroll across the screen, Ben noticed Gwen making no attempt to move. Looking down at her again, he saw her eyes were half shut, like she was falling asleep. He smiled to himself and waited another minute before doing anything. "Gwen, you ready to get going?" Ben asked her quietly. Gwen tilted her head up at him, then sat up in her seat and stretched. "Ah, good. Thought I was gonna have to carry you outta here," Ben quipped. Gwen chuckled, standing up out of her seat. "As if you even could, noodle arms." Ben followed her as they grabbed their trash and headed for the exit. "That movie was a lot better than I expected," he said once they were out of the theater. "See? I told you," Gwen said proudly. "Bad movies don't get 98% on Rotten Tomatoes." "Hey, not my fault it looked bad," Ben said. "Animated movies about talking animals are usually utter garbage." "Well, this one was clever. I knew it would be funny, but I didn't think it would tackle such big issues like that too. I'm more surprised it had all those adult jokes in it. Like that Breaking Bad reference and all those jokes about how rabbits screw a lot. How do you slip that by the censors?" Gwen laughed, smiling brightly. Seeing her smile like that made Ben freeze. Whoa. In the past, something weird would happen to him now and then when he saw her like that. Something like the image of it being burned into his mind. Whenever it would happen before, he would try his best to ignore it. He didn't really understand what it was, and he didn't want to admit he was afraid of what it might mean. But now he understood. She's beautiful. It was even easier to see when she smiled like long ago. Ben would have been terrified to have that thought, and he would have tried to brush it off and pretend he wasn't thinking it. But now, he suddenly realized he didn't have to do that anymore. Gwen was beautiful, and it felt amazing to be able to admit it to himself now. He must have been staring at her oddly, because Gwen started to seem a little embarrassed. "What are you looking at?" "A pretty girl," Ben said with a teasing smile. "What?" Gwen blushed furiously. Ben figured she must have known why he was looking at her, but she was probably expecting him to make fun of her or something to cover it up, not just come right out and say it like that. "You doofus," she said, giving him a light shove. "Don't just say stuff like that out of nowhere." Ben laughed as he stumbled from her shove. "Sorry, I think I've been hanging out with Lucy too much." "Whatever," Gwen said, tilting her head up at the night sky. "It's getting late," she said. Ben looked at his watch. "I guess so. Want me to walk you home?" "I mean, sure, if you want to." The two of them had never made a big deal out of Ben walking her home before, but now that it was at the end of a date, it felt different. But like everything else, it was a good kind of different, and Ben could see how happy Gwen was as he walked alongside her. While they walked, Ben had a thought. They'd spent all day together, but they hadn't really done anything more than what they did when they were still just friends. He wondered if he should be doing something more right now since they were a couple. "Let's see, what did I do differently with Julie?" He thought for a minute, but he came up with very little. After listing everything he did with Julie while they were dating, he realized he already did most of it with Gwen as well. Good God! We've practically been dating all this time already, haven't we? They had done a few things differently, though. He and Julie used to hold hands a lot, and they'd even kissed a few times, although they hadn't really made out or anything more than pecks on the cheek. Should I hold her hand at least? Glancing to his side, he saw Gwen had her eyes forward. She looked like she was concentrating on something, but he had no idea what that might be. Hesitantly, he inched his hand closer to hers, reaching for it. Just before he touched it, he pulled his hand back. "Maybe it's too early for that. How long was I dating Julie before we held hands?" This was something else that was different. He never overthought anything with Julie as much as he was doing right now. Being with Gwen was different. There was an enormous pressure to get everything exactly right. Maybe I should ask Lucy for some help with this. While he was thinking, he flinched as he felt Gwen's hand suddenly grab his. Looking to his side in surprise, he saw Gwen was looking defiantly at the ground with a slightly angry expression on her face. Is she just embarrassed to be holding my hand? Or is she mad that she had to be the one to do it? Was she waiting for me to do it first? Ben said nothing, but he held Gwen's hand as they walked together for most of the way back to her house. It felt similar to when Lucy held his hand, only it somehow felt even better. Maybe we should stop holding hands now," Gwen said nervously when they reached her neighborhood. "Someone might see us." "Oh, right," Ben said, letting go of her hand. Gwen had sounded calm and collected when she spoke, but from the look on her face, Ben could tell she was incredibly disheartened. She probably didn't like that they had to keep this a secret. "Sorry," he said quietly. "It's okay," Gwen said. "I knew it would be like this." They walked a little farther, and soon they were standing by Gwen's front steps. Once again, they didn't know how to say goodbye anymore. Ben tried to figure out if they needed to say anything, make plans for another date, or even kiss. Definitely too early for that. Ben chuckled lightly. "It's still a bit weird, huh?" Gwen smiled. "Yeah." She looked down at the ground, and her smile faded. "Do you think it'll always be weird?" "I think it'd be weirder if it wasn't," Ben said half-jokingly. Gwen didn't laugh, or even look up at him. "But I don't care," he said more seriously. Gwen met his gaze. "Really? I said I wanted to do this, didn't I? Ben said. And after today, I'm even more sure about it. A smile of relief crept across Gwen's face. Today was fun, she said. Yeah, Ben agreed. There was a pause. They stared into each other's eyes, still unsure how to say goodbye. We'll do it again soon, okay? Gwen nodded. Okay. Well, good night, Ben said, waving as he turned to leave. Good night, Gwen said before heading inside. As he walked back home, Ben felt about as happy as Gwen had looked. It was a similar feeling to when he'd first started dating Julie. He couldn't believe that something so great was happening to him. However, just before he reached his neighborhood, he was startled by a familiar, excited squeal coming from behind him. Eeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeeee spin around before he was tackled to the ground. "You did it! You did it! You did it!" Lucy cheered, sitting on Ben's thighs and playfully pounding his chest with her hands. "Okay, okay, Lucy." Ben grabbed her fists to stop her assault. Lucy giggled and rolled off of him, doing an unnecessary yet graceful twirl as she got to her feet. Then she leaned over and held out her hand to help Ben up. "I need to stop being surprised when you show up out of nowhere," Ben said. "Please don't. It's way funnier like this." Ben chuckled. "What are you doing out here, anyway?" he asked. Then he narrowed his eyes at her. "You weren't following us around today, were you?" "No, silly. I said I wouldn't, didn't I? I may be a creep, but I'm a creep of my word, thank you very much." "Well, fine, I believe you. But, what are you doing out here?" "Gwen called me," Lucy said. "She told me all about your show." Ben shushed her, quickly putting his hand over her mouth. He looked around nervously, even though it was the middle of the night and no one else was around. "Date," Lucy finished in a whisper once Ben took his hand away from her. Ben nodded. "Do you hear? Come on," he said, setting off towards his house again and waving for Lucy to come along with him. "Wait, so Gwen called you? How'd you get here so fast then?" "Oh, I was on my way back to my place. I had dinner with your parents," Lucy replied, catching up to walk alongside him. "What? What are you doing having dinner with my parents?" "Oh, don't worry. Your parents love me. And you should really talk to them more often." "I'll keep that in mind," Ben said insincerely, unsure where that random lecture had come from. "So, what did Gwen say?" A big grin spread across Lucy's face. "She said it went great. Her heart was all aflutter about you two holding hands when you walked her home. So cute." Yeah." Ben looked to the side and scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. Lucy let out another happy little giggle. "So, how was it for you?" she asked, smiling expectantly. Ben grinned. "It was good." "Were you nervous?" It was no big deal. I mean, it's not like I've never been on a date before." Lucy gave him a skeptical pout. "Come on, Ben. We both know this was different. You can tell me." Ben sighed. "Fine, it was a little weird," he admitted. "But, I liked it." Lucy clapped her hands together and smiled. "Yes. So this is a thing now, right? You're gonna keep dating?" "Yes, we are," Ben confirmed. Lucy grinned. "That's just what I was hoping to hear." April, Year 4, Part 1. Over the next few weeks, Ben and Gwen went on several more secret dates. It was actually rather simple to keep it from their parents in the beginning. After all, they'd already been hanging out regularly for years, so when Ben told his parents he was going to hang out with Gwen, he wasn't even really lying, and there was no reason to find it suspicious. However, the fear of discovery was always there, and as the weeks went on, it was beginning to make them paranoid. One night, while Ben was having dinner with his parents, his father asked him a question out of the blue. "So, Ben, have you been seeing any girls lately?" Ben flinched, but quickly tried to regain his composure. "Act natural." "Why? What did you hear?" "So natural." "Nothing, I was just curious," his father responded. Ben wasn't convinced. He tried to think if he and Gwen had slipped up at some point. Had they gone on a date somewhere their parents might have seen them? Were they spending even more time together than usual? Are parents just naturally suspicious of a teenage boy and a teenage girl spending time together, even if they are cousins? "Have you talked to Julie at all lately?" Ben's mother asked him. "Oh. Is that what this is about?" Ben was still somewhat cautious, but he felt mostly relieved. Yeah, actually. We're just, just friends now," though he explained. "Oh, that's nice," his mother said with a smile. "But you haven't been seeing anyone else, then?" "Nope." From the way his parents glanced at each other, Ben thought maybe they suspected he was lying, and that made him nervous. But more than that, he felt dirty. When was the last time he'd lied right to his parents' faces like that? Sure, he lied about his summer trips all the time, but by now he'd accepted that as necessary. And yeah, maybe he told little lies now and then, like that he was finished with his homework or that he'd only stay up playing video games for another hour before going to bed. But this was different. He couldn't understand why, since keeping this secret was even more necessary than keeping his alien crime-fighting secret. Something about it just felt more real. "I can't believe this. It's only been a few weeks, and I'm already sick of lying to my parents. And they might even suspect us. I knew this was gonna be hard, but come on." Ben wondered if Gwen was dealing with the same thing. If he felt bad lying to his parents, she must have felt even worse about it. In spite of everything, that thought made him smile slightly. Even if it annoyed him sometimes, Gwen's obsession with always following the rules and respecting authority was kind of cute. Kind of cute. He still couldn't get over how weird it felt to think something like that about his cousin. She really was cute, too. How did I not notice before? Or did I? That got Ben wondering about how Gwen would react if he called her cute to her face. Would it annoy her and make her blush? Or would it make her taunt him for being such a softie? "What are you smiling about, Ben?" his mother asked him. Ben cleared his throat, snapping out of his train of thought. "Nothing." Lucy lied sprawled out on the couch with the TV on. She was watching a show she liked, but she wasn't really paying attention to it. Her mind was still on Ben and Gwen, like it had been to an even greater degree than normal for the past few weeks. Every now and then, thoughts of those two finally dating would cross her mind, and she would find herself unreasonably giddy and excited. Rolling over a little, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she opened up her messages so she could read over an exchange she'd had with Gwen the night before. Gwen had gone on yet another successful date with her new boyfriend, Ben. It made Lucy smile brightly and squeal a little, bouncing up and down on the couch. "I can't believe this is really happening." Sitting upright, Lucy began swinging her legs merrily as she eyed her phone. There was still so much she wanted to say to Ben and Gwen. So many dreams she wanted to make true for them, and for herself. Her mind was racing at the thought of being a part of such an incredible, forbidden romance. Her musings were interrupted by the sound of voices coming from the other room, which made her reflexively hide her phone. No matter how much she wanted to shout it to the world, Ben and Gwen's relationship still had to be kept secret, even from Joel and Camille. "Something wrong, dear?" Lucy heard Camille say. Nothing much," came Joel's reply. "Just got an email from my boss. Looks like I'll be in till late tomorrow night." "They really put you to work, don't they?" Camille said. "It's looking like I'll have a few tough days at work this week too." Joel sighed. "Yeah, I miss being a plumber. I'll take aliens over these office drones any day." "Well, at least you got to keep the best alien you'll ever meet," Camille said with a playful confidence. Joel laughed. "Ha! I guess I did, didn't I?" As Joel and Camille's voices continued to travel from the other room, Lucy shut off the TV. She didn't feel like laughing anymore. All her giddiness and thoughts of romance just seemed to have been sapped out of her. With a stone-faced expression, she got up off the couch and went upstairs. In her room, Lucy lied down on her bed and stared up at the ceiling. It felt like she had weights pressing down on her. "I miss being a plumber." Joel's words hadn't sounded entirely serious, and he'd only said it in passing, but this wasn't the first time Lucy had heard him express that sort of sentiment. Camille had said similar things in the past as well. Lucy never enjoyed overhearing them talk about how they missed their old life. The life they'd only briefly gotten to experience together before she'd taken it away from them. Clenching her fists, she was just about to scream into her pillow when her computer made a noise. She was getting a Skype call from Gwen. Weakly, a smile crept across her face, and she rolled out of bed. After taking a seat in front of her laptop, Lucy took a deep breath and answered the call. "Hey, Gwen." "Ooh, and Ben, too." "Hi." Lucy waved into the camera. "Hey, Lucy," Ben said. "How are you?" Gwen asked. "Oh, I'm great," Lucy said, trying to ignore what had happened just before they called. "What about you guys? How's everything in paradise?" Gwen looked at her a little skeptically. Lucy thought she was doing a convincing job of acting normal, but the other girl glanced at Ben in a way that made it seem like she was trying to silently communicate her suspicions with him. However, she said nothing about it. "We're great, too. Aren't we, Ben?" "We sure are," Ben agreed, putting his arm around Gwen and pulling her a little closer to him. A much more genuine smile flashed across Lucy's face as she saw the two of them acting close like that. "Oh, you guys are so cute." "Oh, come on," Ben said. He took his arm off of Gwen and the two of them scooted away from each other a little, looking slightly embarrassed. Lucy giggled in response. After she stopped, she noticed Gwen was looking at her strangely again, and she realized she was letting her smile fade a little. She decided to yawn and stretch to make herself seem more relaxed, hoping that might throw Gwen off. "So, Lucy, Ben and I were gonna go to the mall a little later. You wanna come?" Gwen asked after a few more minutes of small talk. Lucy gasped excitedly. "Really? Can I?" Since Ben and Gwen had started dating, Lucy had been giving them plenty of time to be alone together. She'd mostly been hanging out with only one of them at a time, or with both of them just after school at one of their houses. She hadn't had a chance to really see them doing couple things yet, so tagging along on their date to the mall sounded like the most fun thing in the world to her. Yeah, of course you can, Ben agreed. Lucy clapped her hands together. Ooh, I'd love to. After agreeing on a time, they said their goodbyes and hung up. Even though Lucy had been faking it at the start of the call, she was now thoroughly excited, her earlier despondency nearly forgotten. Ooh, I just can't wait. Hey, did Lucy seem a little down to you earlier? Gwen asked, walking hand in hand with Ben towards the mall. Yeah, definitely, Ben agreed. Not nearly crazy enough. Something's definitely up. I thought so too. She seemed kinda sad. Is that why you invited her on our date? Gwen nodded. I figured that would cheer her up. You don't mind, do you? Nah, I was getting kinda bored with you anyway, Ben teased. Gwen smiled and made an indignant noise before punching him in the shoulder. Well, too bad. You're stuck with me now. For a good portion of the walk, the two of them didn't see many other people around, so they managed to avoid getting too jumpy about getting caught holding hands. Gwen in particular was enjoying that fact, which was why most of her focus was devoted to hiding just how happy she was. On the outside, she wore a contented smile. On the inside, fireworks were going off in her head just from feeling his hand in hers. You don't think Lucy's gonna feel like a third wheel, do you? Ben asked as they neared the mall. I hope not, Gwen said. I mean, by definition, that's exactly what she's doing, third wheeling. But, it seems like she really wants to see the two of us being couple. Why? Ben chuckled. Yeah, she does seem weirdly into that. Plus, it'll be kind of a relief for us, you know. Gwen said quietly. It'll be nice to be able to be together like this in front of someone we know for once. Ben nodded. Yeah. That's true. Gwen smiled, but her statement reminded her that they were holding hands in public. By then, they were at the edge of the mall parking lot, and she could see lots of other people. Let's stop for now, though, she said. Oh, right, Ben agreed, letting go of her hand. Gwen's heart sank a little, but she reminded herself that she'd be spending the rest of the day with him anyway. Even if they weren't brave enough to hold hands together at the mall, they were still on a date. You see Lucy anywhere? She asked, looking around the parking lot. Ben looked around too. Nope. But I suspect she'll pop up out of nowhere when we least expect it. But if you expect her to pop up when you don't expect it, won't she never show up? Or does that mean you'll no longer expect it, so she will show up? It's too early in the day for paradoxes. It's 3 in the afternoon. It's always too early in the day for paradoxes. Gwen laughed. Spoken like a true doofus. Despite Ben's prediction, Lucy didn't pop out of nowhere. Instead, they found her waiting inside the mall just past the entrance. She didn't notice them yet, and she was just standing there smiling and humming to herself as she rocked back and forth slightly. Lucy! Gwen called out to her, waving to get her attention. When Lucy noticed them, she waved back. Hello, Gwen. Gwen. Ben and Gwen asked in unison, glancing at each other in confusion as they approached her. It's your shipping name, Lucy said happily. Ben and Gwen face-palmed simultaneously. Lucy giggled, clapping her hands together. So, where to first? Romantic seaside getaway. Scary movie that makes her cling to you. Tunnel of love. None of those are really mall things, Lucy Gwen pointed out. Well, this mall does have a movie theater. I'll have to leave a note about the tunnel of love in the suggestion box, though, Lucy said, putting her hand to her chin and nodding thoughtfully. Let's just walk around and see where we end up for now, Ben suggested. Ooh. I know. Lucy hopped over next to him and leaned in to whisper in his ear. An embarrassed expression appeared on Ben's face. No, I don't think should do that. What? What did she say? Gwen asked. Nothing. Don't worry about it. Gwen wore an unamused expression. I bet she suggested something pervy. Lucy giggled. All right, your loss. Now, let's get going, she said as if she were about to lead the way. However, she just stood there, looking back and forth between Ben and Gwen with an expectant look on her face. What? What is it? Ben asked. Well, aren't you gonna hold hands? Lucy asked. Ben and Gwen looked at each other skeptically, then turned back to Lucy. That's kinda weird, Gwen said. Oh come on, I know you've done it, Lucy argued. It's not that, Gwen explained. It's just doing it for you, while you observe us. It's kinda weird, she repeated. Fine. Here, I know, Lucy said, skipping between her and Ben and taking each of them by the hand. Perfect. Let's go. Ben and Gwen gave each other another look, but decided to just go with it for now. Linked in a chain, the three of them walked further into the mall, with Lucy swinging their arms up and down as they went. Gwen examined Lucy very thoughtfully. She wasn't showing any signs of sadness or of having anything else on her mind. Right now, she looked perfectly content to be holding hands with her two best friends. She may have already forgotten whatever it was that had been bothering her earlier, if there even had been something bothering her. Given Lucy's apparent scatterbrained thought process, it wouldn't have surprised her. But on the other hand, Gwen knew how good of an actor Lucy was. She could usually hide her sadness perfectly, which was part of the reason Gwen was so worried about her. It had to have been something really bad to get her to let her guard down like that, even for a moment. Ooh. Lucy pointed towards something a little up ahead. She let go of their hands and ran forward. What she'd spotted was a kiosk in the mall concourse selling little trinkets. When Ben and Gwen caught up to her, she took a necklace off the rack and held it up for them to see. This is so pretty. Ben, you should totally buy it for her, she said, gesturing to Gwen. Ben looked at the necklace, then turned his attention to Gwen. Do you want me to? Gwen shook her head. No, it's all right. Besides, she said, pulling her locket out from beneath her shirt. I already have a necklace. She smiled warmly to herself as she held the locket Ben had given her in her hand. Oh yeah. Lucy said, turning to Ben and abruptly shoving her hand down his shirt. Whoa. Hey. Ben complained. Lucy. What do you think you're doing? Gwen said, completely baffled by her actions. Lucy didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out Ben's locket, then reached out and grabbed Gwen's with her other hand. She held them both up, staring at them. Sure is nice. She said wistfully. Behind Lucy's smile, Gwen could see envy in Lucy's eyes. Gently, she put her hand in Lucy's, covering up her locket. Hey, how about we get something to eat? My treat, she suggested. Lucy snapped out of it almost immediately, letting go of the lockets. Okay. She said, turning and skipping away. Ben and Gwen re-hid their lockets, then moved to catch up with Lucy. Something happened right there. What is she thinking? At Ben's suggestion, all three of them ended up getting freshly baked cinnamon rolls. Ben and Gwen sat next to each other on a bench as they ate. Lucy paced back and forth in front of them, telling them some story that wasn't coming out well because she kept stuffing her face and talking with her mouth full. In the middle of her story, Lucy suddenly stopped pacing. She glanced between Ben and Gwen and gave them a very smug smile. Oh my! Holding hands in public. How lewd! Gwen hadn't realized it, but she and Ben had their hands laced together on the bench between them. Quickly, they pulled their hands apart and turned slightly away from each other, blushing. Lucy giggled. You two are just the cutest. The rest of their trip to the mall was filled with similar incidents. Ben and Gwen tried to keep their PDA to a minimum out of both embarrassment and fear of getting caught, while Lucy enjoyed seeing them act that way and took every opportunity she could to tease them about it. On their way out of the mall, Lucy was again holding hands with both of them when they passed by a photo booth. Lucy stopped in her tracks, gasping excitedly. There! We're going in there! She said, pulling them along. A photo booth? Like, for couples? Do people even really do that? Ben asked skeptically. Ben's right, it seems a little cliché, Gwen said. What's wrong with that? I love clichés. Undeterred, Lucy pulled them into the booth with her. The three of them sat down together on the bench inside, with Lucy still in the middle. Okay, let's see here. Lucy began fiddling with the console in front of them, selecting the camera settings. Gwen shared a hesitant look with Ben. This seemed like a weird idea to her, and he didn't seem particularly into it either. All right. Sorry, cheese. Lucy declared, leaning back into the bench to pose with them. Ben and Gwen smiled as the camera began snapping pictures. Hey, why do people say cheese when taking photos? Do humans just really like cheese or something? Gwen furrowed her brow. What? No, it's... They're printing. Lucy said excitedly as a strip of photos slid out of the console. She reached out and grabbed them, holding them up so they could all see. The first couple photos showed Lucy making funny faces while Ben and Gwen grimaced. But in the photos that were taken while Lucy was asking about cheese, she had her mouth open and was putting her hand to her chin, appearing as if she were discussing deep philosophical matters. The last few photos had Ben and Gwen turning towards her, looking confused. Despite being rather unenthusiastic about this at first, looking over the pictures made Gwen crack up. Something about the way they seemed to tell a story as just a few snapshots in time was funny to her. Ben seemed to find it amusing too, and he joined in on the laughter. See? What did I tell ya? Lucy asked. You wanna do another round? Ben suggested. Yeah. Lucy handed him the strip of photos, then leaned forward to change the settings again. Lucy's positive attitude was infectious, and Gwen actually ended up having a lot of fun. Also, being in a private little booth meant she and Ben didn't need to worry about being seen by someone they knew. Before long, all three of them were making funny faces and striking dramatic poses while the camera took round after round of photos. At one point, right before the camera took a picture, Lucy turned and gave Gwen a kiss on the cheek. Hey! Why? Gwen barely had time to complain before Lucy turned and did the same to Ben. Whoa, what? Gwen would have been more annoyed with her, but seeing the shocked look on Ben's face made her laugh, and Ben seemed to take it pretty well too. Then, she and Ben shared a look and somehow knew they both had the same idea. As Lucy posed for the next photo, Ben and Gwen leaned in from either side and gave her a kiss on both cheeks at the same time. Lucy gasped excitedly just as the photo was taken. When the session timed out, the photo booth spit out another strip of photos. Lucy immediately seized it and looked through them, giggling. These came out great. Oh, God. I don't even want to look at them, Ben said, laughing in embarrassment. Gwen chuckled, feeling the same as Ben. You can go ahead and keep those ones, she said to Lucy. Can do. Lucy agreed, seeming all too happy to oblige. As they walked out of the mall together, Lucy was going through the photos some more. She stopped on one in particular, and Gwen leaned over to see which one it was. Unsurprisingly, it was the one with Ben and Gwen kissing her. The look on her face showed more happiness than she'd shown in a very long time, and that was saying something. That's a keeper, Lucy said. Gwen smiled to herself. Well, I guess that cheered her up. The three of them went back to Ben's house after the mall. When they got there, Ben unlocked his front door and stepped inside. Immediately afterwards, Lucy charged past him. Coming in, she shouted, stopping to do a little twirl in the foyer before she kicked off her shoes. Carl. Sandra. She called out, waiting for a response. My parents aren't home, Ben said, holding the door open to let Gwen in. Ooh, I guess that means. No, Gwen said, shutting Lucy down before she could make any pervy suggestion. Oh, man. Together, they moved into Ben's living room. Lucy hopped in front of the TV and examined the games Ben had left lying out by the game console. So, what are we playing? Lucy asked. Ben and Gwen glanced at each other. Now's as good a time as any. Actually, Lucy, can we ask you about something first? Gwen asked. Lucy turned back around to face them, tilting her head curiously. When we're talking on Skype earlier, was something, like, bothering you? I mean, that's how it seemed, anyway. Ben said. Lucy stood there with a vague smile on her face. She seemed to be waiting for someone to say something else, but when Ben and Gwen continued to look at her expectantly, she responded. No, I'm fine, she said. Her face didn't show any signs of that not being true, but Gwen was still skeptical. Lucy, listen, Gwen said, taking a few steps forward. Remember that summer you came on our trip with us? How you spent the whole time acting like everything was fine, but really you were freaking out because you were worried about Joel and Camille. Lucy waved her hand dismissively. Pfft, Camille and Joel are fine. I know, but that's not the point, Gwen said. I think you bottle up stuff like that. And that's not good for you. You always tell us we can talk to you, Ben chimed in. You can talk to us, too, you know. I mean, if you want. Lucy looked back and forth between them. She kept smiling, but she was gradually starting to let the worry show on her face. Gwen closed the gap between them and took Lucy's hand in hers, looking her in the eyes as she spoke. Lucy, please. Let us help. Lucy's smile faded completely. Okay, she said quietly after a moment, no longer trying to fake her way out of it. Good. Gwen led Lucy over to the couch and Ben sat down in the chair across from them. So, tell us what's bothering you, Gwen said. Lucy shifted uncomfortably and gave them an awkward smile. It's no big deal, really. It's just, I don't think Camille and Joel are very happy with their new jobs. Ben furrowed his brow. Their new jobs? What do you mean? Lucy looked off into space for a moment before continuing. Joel was a plumber. When he and Camille got together, she started helping him out with that too. After they adopted me, they thought they could keep that up. But they couldn't. After their last mission went on 4 months longer than expected, they realized they couldn't be plumbers and raise a kid. Lucy sniffled a little and wiped a tear from her eye. Camille's only 16 years older than me, you know. And Joel's only a little older than her. I don't think they were ready to have a kid, really. They kinda had to drop everything for me. I really screwed up their lives, you know. Lucy couldn't keep it together any longer. Her voice started to tremble as she finished her sentence, and tears began streaming down her face. Hey, Gwen said in a soothing tone of voice, leaning forward to embrace her. It reminded her of 2 years ago. She'd spent the whole summer completely unaware of how much Lucy was worrying about her surrogate parents. Now, once again, it turned out Lucy had been hiding some serious concerns about them, all while acting as upbeat and energetic as ever. How does she do it? As Lucy sobbed quietly into her shoulder, Gwen turned to Ben and shot him a look that said, well, do something, doofus. Ben seemed just as shocked about the whole thing as Gwen was. He raised his hands questioningly and mouthed, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Anything. Gwen mouthed back. Ben hesitated a moment, then took a deep breath. Lucy, he said, getting her attention. Lucy leaned back out of Gwen's embrace and looked at him, sniffling. I realize that, by this point, you probably know Joel a lot better than I do, Ben said. But I think I have a good idea of what he's going through, with having to give up being a plumber and all. Ben lifted his left arm and stared at the slightly discolored patch of skin on his wrist. When I lost the Omnitrix, it was rough. I still miss it. And I hate knowing that I don't get to be a hero anymore, or have cool adventures and fight aliens like I used to. Ben's confession had Gwen's full attention. She knew he felt this way, but she usually wasn't able to get him to talk about how he felt about it like this. But, it doesn't really matter. Sure, I have to accept that my life will be more normal from now on, but... He turned his head toward Gwen. I still have the people I care about most. And I get to spend my normal life with them. Ben. Gwen said softly, touched by his sentiment. Ben turned back to Lucy. I bet Joel feels the same way. No matter what he lost when he gave up being a plumber, he still has Camille, and he still has you. Lucy looked as touched as Gwen was. She stared at Ben, and through her tears, she actually began to smile a little. And, for what it's worth, Gwen added. We're really glad Joel and Camille took up regular jobs, because if they hadn't, they wouldn't have moved to Bellwood. And we're so grateful to have you here with us now. Lucy's smile grew wider, and the tears she was wiping from her face turned to tears of joy. Thank you, she said. Really, you guys. That means a lot to me. Gwen turned and gave Ben a nod, trying to tell him she was proud of him. Ben just scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. He didn't open up like that very often. Okay. Lucy suddenly said loudly, clapping her hands onto her thighs before hopping to her feet. I feel a lot better now, thank you. She moved across the room back to the TV and grabbed a controller. So, for real this time, what are we playing? What are you gonna major in when you get to college? Gwen asked. She and Ben were out for a little stroll through the park. The conversation hadn't been about school or college plans up until that point, but it had been on her mind, so she decided to ask him about it. Gwen, we haven't even started high school yet. I know, but it's never too early to think about it. Sometimes it is, dweeb. Gwen punched him in the arm. Hey! Ben complained. You know, I thought you'd stop doing that once we started dating. Gwen laughed. Being my boyfriend doesn't get you out of being my cousin. Yeah, that's a normal sentence, Ben said sarcastically. Then a mischievous smile crept across his face. Well, if that's how it's gonna be. He came up behind Gwen and put her in a headlock, giving her a noogie. Ow! Quit it, doofus. Gwen wiggled out of Ben's grip, then spun around and tried to roundhouse kick him. However, Ben managed to block her kick, grabbing her by the ankle. Gwen looked at him in surprise. Oh, please. Like I've never fought you before. Ben lifted Gwen's leg up to throw off her balance. Whoa. Gwen started to fall, but she grabbed Ben's hand on the way down, pulling him with her. When they landed, Ben was on top of her, holding herself up with his hands on the ground on either side of her. Their faces were dangerously close. This had happened before. It was still embarrassing this time, but now, Gwen didn't feel like she had to pull away. As they stared into each other's eyes, Ben slowly lowered his face down further, his lips getting closer and closer to Gwen's. Her breathing became heavy. She wasn't expecting anything like this to happen today. Is this it? Are we finally gonna? But Ben froze. Gwen didn't want him to, but she couldn't bring herself to close that final gap either. Instead, they just kept staring at each other until Gwen remembered where they were. Public. We're in public. She frantically reminded Ben, putting her hands on his chest to push him off of her. Ben rolled onto his back, lying next to her. Right, he said. Right, sorry. Gwen got to her feet and offered her hand to Ben, helping him up. Things felt awkward all of a sudden. After that close encounter, she couldn't think of anything to say. What do we do now? So, can I walk you home? She offered. It wasn't that late, and they probably could have hung out for a bit longer, but the mood was spoiled. Yeah. Sure, Ben answered. He looked around, then held out his hand. Gwen looked at Ben's hand hesitantly. It seemed weird to do this right after embarrassing themselves already, but she took his hand and began walking with him towards his house. Kissing. That's all that was on Gwen's mind as they walked. When are we gonna do it? Or should we even do it? Is it too early? Or should we have started by now? She had no idea. It had only been a few weeks since they'd started dating. But they'd known each other forever. But they were cousins. But they were already doing this anyway. What are the rules? She felt silly for thinking about it so much, but she couldn't help it. She and Ben were dating now, like she had wanted. That meant they had to do these things, right? It's not like I'm thinking about sex or anything. Gwen blushed, turning her head slightly and letting her eyes look Ben up and down real quick. She coughed and turned her head to face forward again. No. Definitely not. Of course not. She was so lost in thought, she didn't even realize it when they'd reached Ben's neighborhood. Gwen. Shouldn't we? Ben asked, trying to slide his hand out of her grip. Gwen gripped his hand tighter, not wanting to let go. Then she actually processed what he was saying. Oh. Yeah. I knew that, she said, letting his hand escape from hers. When they got to Ben's house, they stood outside his front door, facing each other. They'd been in this situation so many times before. Gwen felt like she should be saying or doing something, but she couldn't figure out what, and it was made even worse this time by their almost kiss earlier. It was fun today, Gwen said, unable to think of anything else. Yeah, it was, Ben agreed. Silence again. Gwen inched forward a little, and Ben looked her dead in the eye. Maybe, now. Gwen suddenly realized how fast her heart was beating. She couldn't take much more of this. Your parents are inside, Gwen blurted out, bringing herself abruptly back down to earth. Yeah, Ben said, nervously scratching the back of his head. They had agreed never to do anything when their parents were around, since they could never know when they might walk in unannounced. Guess I better head inside, then. Okay, Gwen said. Well, good night. Good night, dweeb. Ben turned and went inside. Gwen stood there for a moment, thinking over what had just happened. As she walked home, her thoughts once again turned to kissing. She still had no idea how to figure this thing out. Although, one idea occurred to her. I gotta ask Lucy. April, Year 4, Part 2. Lucy hummed musically to herself as she skipped down the stairs with a bag of her things slung over her shoulder. Every few steps, she would stop in time with the tune, then skip back up a few stairs before continuing down. Camille stood at the bottom of the steps, looking up at Lucy with a patient smile on her face. Lucy, I'm in no hurry, but isn't Gwen expecting you soon? She said after watching for a minute. Oh, yeah. I guess you're right. Hup. Lucy jumped down the remaining stairs, stumbling a bit as she landed. All right, then. Ready to go, sweetie? Camille asked. Yeah. Lucy said, nodding enthusiastically. Wait. Suddenly deciding she had one more thing to do before she left, Lucy dropped her bag and ran into the other room. Joel looked up from his laptop just in time to see Lucy coming towards him. What? He didn't have time to finish before Lucy wrapped her arms around him, squeezing him tight and giving him a kiss on the cheek. Ah, okay. What's all this for? He asked. Lucy smiled brightly at him. Just for being you, she said before turning back around and running back out of the room. Back by the front door, Camille was holding Lucy's bag. All ready now? She asked. Yep. Lucy stepped forward to take her bag. And off to Gwen's, she said, leaping out the front door. She skipped over to the car in the driveway and held the handle to the passenger side door, bouncing on her feet until Camille walked over and unlocked it. It was a short drive to Gwen's house. Lucy usually would have walked, but Camille had offered to drive her there since Lucy was planning to sleep over and had to bring some things. When they arrived, Camille pulled into the driveway. Lucy leaned over and gave her a hug goodbye. Have fun, sweetie, Camille said to her. Thanks for the ride. Love you. Lucy said as she got out of the car. Waving goodbye once more, she made her way to the front door and let herself in. Honey, I'm home. Don't call me honey. And this is my home, came Gwen's reply from the next room. After a moment, she walked into the foyer to greet Lucy. It was my home for 2 months, remember? Lucy said. For some reason, she was in an even more affectionate mood than normal, so she couldn't resist giving her cousin a hug as well. Luckily, Gwen seemed to be expecting it. Yeah, Gwen said with a slight chuckle as she patted Lucy on the back. So, wanna come up to my room? Do I? Lucy said, smiling suggestively. Get out. No, I'll be good. Fine. Gwen turned and headed up the stairs to her room, and Lucy skipped behind her carrying her bag. Gwen and Lucy spent most of the evening helping each other with their homework, playing video games, and just talking. It was nice spending time with her like this, but Gwen hadn't asked Lucy to sleep over just so they could hang out. She had something to ask her, but she'd been putting it off for the last few hours. It was just too embarrassing. But eventually, during a lull in the conversation while Lucy was munching on some chips, Gwen worked up the courage to say it. "Hey, Lucy, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What's up?" "It's about Ben." Ooh. Lucy was suddenly at full attention, tossing the bag of chips to the side and scooting closer to Gwen. "Having a little romantic trouble, eh?" "Well, ask away." "The love doctor is in." "Don't call yourself that." "But, anyway." Gwen toyed with her hair nervously as she picked out her words. "So, how long do people usually wait before they kiss?" Lucy furrowed her brow. "You and Ben haven't kissed yet." Gwen reflexively glanced at her door to make sure it was closed. This was definitely not a conversation she wanted her parents to overhear. "So we are going too slow, then?" Gwen asked quietly, her fears seemingly confirmed. No, not necessarily," Lucy said hurriedly. "I mean, I guess you've only been dating since last month. And you're new to this. And you guys always take things slow. Don't rub it in." "I'm not." Lucy waved her hands disarmingly. "Well, have you tried kissing him?" "Not really." "Why not?" "You kiss me." "No, I don't." "You kiss me," Gwen corrected. Lucy smiled smugly. "And sometimes you kiss back." Gwen blushed a little. "That's not the point. It's different with Ben." "Did you ever kiss him before you started dating?" "Why would I have kissed him before we started dating?" Gwen asked, confused. "Your family." "Don't remind me." Lucy giggled. "So, really? Never? Not even once?" Gwen was about to confirm that, but then she remembered something. "Well, actually, there was one time." Lucy gasped excitedly, scooting even closer to Gwen. Tell me." "It was at the end of last summer," Gwen began. "Right after we fought Vilgax for the last time. Ben gave up the Omnitrix, and he was almost killed in the explosion. When he woke up, I was just so glad he was alive, and I wanted to thank him for doing something so selfless, and... Gwen realized she was shivering, her whole body shaking at the memory. Hey, Lucy said softly, crawling over to Gwen and putting a hand on her back. "It's all right, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," she told Gwen in a much more serious tone than she'd been speaking with so far. No, it's all right," Gwen said, breathing a little heavily, but calming herself down. "Sorry. I don't know where that came from." "No need to apologize," Lucy said, shaking her head. "But, like I was saying," Gwen continued, regaining her composure. "Ben and I have never really kissed." "Has he ever tried to kiss you?" Lucy asked. Gwen thought about it. "There have been times when I think he wanted to, but I think he was too nervous." "Then why don't you try to kiss him?" "Well, I don't even know how." "Oh, it's easy," Lucy assured her. "Want me to teach you?" Gwen furrowed her brow. "What? How?" "You know, practice." "Practice how?" "With me," Lucy said, smiling brightly. Gwen still took another moment to process Lucy's suggestion. She was shocked when she figured it out. Lucy, no. We can't do that. Course we can. Why not? It's just practice. It's because, okay, look. Gwen held up her hands, getting ready to explain something. This is another one of those real life versus TV things that you sometimes get confused about. Girls don't practice kissing in real life. That's just a fantasy boys have about what we do at slumber parties. Lucy smiled smugly. I practiced with a few of my friends at my old school, she said. So looks like TV wins again. Oh yeah. And how many of those girls were actually into girls? Well, all of them, I guess. What kind of slumber parties did you have at your old school? Actually, don't answer that. Lucy laughed, smiling wickedly. The point is, maybe those girls were okay with it, but I'm not, Gwen explained. Okay, never mind, Lucy said, waving her hands. I was just messing with you. Gwen cleared her throat as she regained her bearings. You were joking. About all of that. I didn't say I was joking, I just said I was messing with you. I really did practice kissing with my friends. And I actually would be willing to teach you, if you wanted. Well, wouldn't that be cheating? Gwen asked. A hopeful smile spread across Lucy's face. So does that mean you're considering it? No. Gwen asserted. I'm trying to explain why it wouldn't work, that's all. Well, yeah, I guess you have a point. Darn, Lucy said disappointedly. I mean, Ben would just think it was hot, honestly. But you're right. Guess we shouldn't till we know he's cool with it. Gwen narrowed her eyes skeptically. You're not planning to ask Ben if you can practice kissing with me, are you? Well, not just for practice. It would be cool to have the okay from Ben to do it whenever we want, Lucy said with a wry smile. Gwen stared at her with an unamused expression on her face. Lucy giggled. Okay, fine. But really though, I do wanna help somehow, even if we can't practice. There was a brief pause. Gwen stared at the floor, embarrassed to ask about this topic further. Have you ever done it? She asked. Lucy made a sound of mock indignation. My word, what kind of girl do you think I am? You know what I mean. Gwen said forcefully, blushing at Lucy's fake misunderstanding. Have you ever kissed anyone? Like, really kissed? Not just for practice. Sure, Lucy said. A few. Is it something you can, like, mess up, somehow? Lucy swayed her head back and forth as she thought for a moment. I mean, I guess you could. You'd probably have to be really uncoordinated. But it's easy. Like, seriously, it's nothing. You just put your lips to their lips, and maybe do something cool with your tongue. Tongue, Gwen muttered aloud. What do you do with your tongue? Just, like, here, let me show you. Lucy leaned her face in closer. Gwen froze, her eyes opening wide in surprise. But before she had time to react, Lucy caught herself. Oh, right. Darn it, Lucy said, backing away from her. I really gotta get Ben's permission to make out with you. Gwen shook her head, recovering from her shock. Yeah, don't count on it, she said. Well, can I teach him how to kiss, then? Don't you dare. Lucy giggled at Gwen's territorial attitude. Okay, I was just kidding. But not really. Gwen sighed. Okay. So it's easy. Got it. But, how do I get him to kiss me? Why don't you just kiss him? Gwen shyly averted her gaze. I kinda want him to be the one to do it, she said. I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. But it would be nice to know he wants to do this. I mean, I know he does, but... Oh, you've got such a pure maiden's heart, Lucy said teasingly. That's actually really cute, by the way. Shut up, Gwen said with a laugh. But, if he's not gonna do it, I guess I might have to. He might do it eventually. Or maybe you could just ask him to. I guess, Gwen said. She sighed again. Well, thanks for the advice, Lucy. Thanks for the serious parts of your advice, anyway. Lucy giggled. Anytime, cause. It took Lucy a few days to decide whether or not to tell Ben about her conversation with Gwen. After all, Gwen had told her all of that in confidence, so maybe she'd see it as meddling if she tried to do anything about it. However, Lucy also knew how long it took those two to do anything without a little push now and then. And so, a few days after her sleepover at Gwen's, Lucy found an opportunity to be alone with Ben. They had just gotten Smoothies as their last stop, and Ben was walking Lucy home. So how come you haven't kissed Gwen yet? Lucy asked casually in between sips. Ben lurched forward and made a noise like he was about to spit out his mouth full of smoothie. He quickly swallowed, then started coughing. Whoa. Easy there, champ. Lucy slapped Ben on the back a few times. What? Ben asked, his voice slightly hoarse. Why haven't you kissed Gwen yet? Lucy repeated. What makes you think I haven't? She told me. Oh. Ben looked like he was thinking, but he didn't give an answer. What's the matter? You don't think she's pretty enough? Lucy asked. What are you, stupid? Ben responded instantly. Have you seen her? Lucy laughed. Good answer. You pass. Ben went back to thinking, so Lucy prodded one more time for an answer. So why haven't you, then? I don't know, Ben said quietly. I just haven't found the right time, I guess. He scratched the side of his head nervously. So cute. Did you and Julie ever kiss when you were dating? Lucy asked. She was thinking maybe Ben didn't know how to kiss any more than Gwen did. Pfft. Yeah. Of course we did. All the time, Ben said. Without saying anything, Lucy stared at him with a blank expression on her face. What? We did. Lucy continued to stare, not changing her expression one bit. I'm serious. Lucy stared. All right, fine. We pretty much only ever kissed on the cheek. Dio, you're so cute and innocent. Lucy giggled, reaching over and flicking him on the nose. Ow. Ben rubbed his nose, then sighed. Should I? If you want, Lucy answered, knowing what he meant. I'm only asking 'cause Gwen was asking me about it. She seems ready, if you are. Ben looked like he was considering it. Lucy could understand why he was so hesitant. This was uncharted territory for him, and everything must have been even harder because of his situation with Gwen. You mind if I teach her how to kiss? Lucy asked. Ben seemed confused. What? What does that mean? Lucy looked him in the eyes. Exactly what you think it means, she said, raising her eyebrows suggestively. It still took Ben a moment to figure it out. Oh. Oh. Whoa. Lucy giggled. Yeah. There's a fun mental image for ya. I bet you'll be thinking about that again later. Lucy. So, can I? I'll even let you watch sometime. I don't have the slightest clue how serious you are, but either way, no. Don't. I'd rather our first kiss be with each other. Just each other. Then how about after? Ben laughed. Geez, Lucy. You really wanna make out with Gwen that bad? Duh. Have you seen her? They both laughed. For a few moments, neither of them said anything else while they walked. Then Lucy spoke quietly. Hey, she said to Ben. I think it's really sweet. The way you want to share your first kiss with each other. Lucy. He said, seeming confused by her sudden change in demeanor. She wasn't sure why she had the sudden urge to tell him about this, but after taking a deep breath, she continued. I didn't get to have a meaningful first kiss, she admitted. I mean, the guy was cute and everything, but I haven't even thought about him since we stopped dating, and that wasn't long after we kissed. Oh. So I think it's sweet, what you're doing, Lucy reiterated. You're taking it slow. You're making sure you give Gwen a really great experience. Something to remember. And she's doing the same for you. It's really romantic. Thanks, Lucy. Ben looked like he pitied her, but was trying not to show it. And I hope your next kiss is better. Lucy laughed lightly. Oh, it will be, she declared. Definitely. I just need to find someone like you. About a week later, Ben and Gwen were out together, another date night coming to an end. It was their third date since Gwen's talk with Lucy, and even though she'd wanted to, she still hadn't been able to kiss Ben yet. But tonight's the night. However, that was what she'd told herself the last 2 nights, too. Get it together, Gwen. This is such a stupid thing to get worked up over. She was scolding herself as she walked beside Ben, holding his hand tightly. She knew that making a big deal out of their first kiss was only making things harder on herself, but at the same time, she didn't want to take it lightly. This was important, and it had to be done right. As they were walking past the park, Gwen had an idea. Wait, she said, tugging on Ben's sleeve to stop him. What is it? Let's go through there, she said, pointing. Ben looked confused. I thought I was walking you home. The park's kinda out of the way, isn't it? Yeah, I know, but let's stay out just a little longer, okay? Ben shrugged. Fine with me. He sounded casual about it, but Gwen could tell from his smile that he was happy to spend a little more time with her too. So, they changed course and walked down the path through the park. Neither of them said much. Gwen was too distracted to, as she was channeling all of her focus into what she was planning to do next. The two of them approached a bench on the side of the path. Again, Gwen stopped Ben by tugging on his sleeve. Sit there, she said, pointing at the bench. In her nervousness, she didn't even realize how forceful her command sounded. Ben, however, was apparently used to it, since he sat down without bothering to question it. Gwen sat down beside him. She could actually hear crickets chirping as the two of them faced forward in silence, things suddenly seeming a little awkward. She closed her eyes and took a moment to gather her thoughts. Hey, she said. Ben turned his head slightly. I still can't believe this is real. Ben furrowed his brow. What is this? Us. Gwen leaned forward and fiddled with her hair. I still don't even know how long I've wanted this. It feels like I was waiting forever, even if I didn't always know it. But, thank you. She turned to face Ben. From the blank look on his face, she could tell he didn't know what she was thanking him for. Thank you, for liking me back, for falling in love with me. It's amazing to me, too. Ben leaned back and looked up into the night sky. I don't think I could have predicted this in a million years. But, I'm really glad we did this. Gwen reached over and put her hand on his arm, which caused him to turn his attention back to her. They stared into each other's eyes, and ever so slightly, Gwen leaned in closer to him. Oh God, is this it? Ben seemed to realize what she was doing, because he began slowly leaning in as well. Oh God, this is it. Gwen's heart was beating fast. She braced herself. Any second now, it would happen. But it didn't. Their faces lingered, inches from each other. Ben made no further move to get closer to her. Gwen almost panicked. What do I do? Do I just go for it? Do I try again later? They both stayed frozen in place. Gwen had no idea what Ben was thinking, but if he wasn't gonna do something, she'd have to. Before long, this moment would pass, and it would be too late. Oh, for God's sake, doofus. Will you just kiss me already? Ben flinched, taken aback by Gwen's sudden outburst. Oh. Okay. Gwen sighed. Finally. She leaned forward and closed her eyes. Do it, she said. Just she was interrupted by Ben's lips pressing against hers. Her eyes shot open, surprised despite knowing it was coming, but she quickly closed them again so she could savor the moment. After what seemed like an eternity, they broke off their kiss, leaning away from each other. Gwen stared at Ben, wide-eyed like she was shocked about something. Was that okay? Ben asked. Gwen nodded. Yes. Yes, that was fine. You know, you can be really hard to read. That's only 'cause you're an idiot, Gwen said, leaning in to kiss him again. Ben was feeling pretty proud of himself. After making out with Gwen in the park for a little bit, he'd walked her home and then they'd kissed once more on her doorstep. He couldn't believe it. And according to Gwen, he didn't suck at it, which he thought was a very good compliment by Gwen's standards. Not long after he'd left Gwen's neighborhood, as he was passing by an intersection, Ben heard the sound of humming and footsteps coming from down the road to his side. It was weird to run into anyone else walking around this late in Bellwood, so he planned to ignore it and speed up his pace. However, curiosity got the better of him, and just before he went around the corner, he turned his head to see who the other person was. Lucy. It was hard to see her from so far away in the dark, but he'd recognize her anywhere. Oh, Ben. The blonde girl smiled excitedly when she spotted him. With a few graceful skips, she quickly closed the gap between them. What are you doing out so late? Ben asked her. She was standing very close to him, smiling smugly in a way that made Ben assume she already knew everything. Why, I was just on my way to pay a visit to our mutual acquaintance, Gwendolyn, Lucy said in a fake posh accent. You see, I recently received a bit of news from her that was quite intriguing. Indubitably. Haute couture. Now you're just saying words. Okay, fine. You freaking kissed her, man. Lucy said loudly, excitedly shoving Ben with both hands. Congrats. Ben laughed as he stumbled back from the force of her shove, although he still glanced around nervously, irrationally afraid that his parents might pop out of nowhere and overhear this. You already know. Duh. I know everything. All the time. Wait. You weren't spying on us again, were you? I wish. But no, Gwen texted me. Ben had mixed feelings about that. He wasn't sure if he should be glad that Gwen was happy enough to tell someone immediately afterward, or if he should be worried that she was spreading it around so quickly. However, he figured it would be fine if it was just Lucy. Come, dear Benjamin, Lucy said, slipping into her posh accent again as she grabbed onto his arm. We have much to discuss. Ben shrugged and resumed walking home, now with Lucy clinging to him like he was leading her through the mall again. So, how was it? Lucy asked. How was what? Oh, the weather. Tell me about the kiss. Ben laughed. Okay. I don't know, it was great, actually. I didn't really expect it to happen tonight. And I was kinda surprised when she told me to kiss her. But, I don't know, I guess we've almost done it so many times now that she just kinda got fed up with it. How long did you kiss her for? What? I don't know, not too long. We were both really worried about someone seeing us. Did you do anything else? Like what, Lucy? No. Oh, but still, you kissed her. Yep. I did, Ben said proudly. As they walked to Ben's house together, Lucy made him recount his entire date. When he got to the part right before their kiss, she made him retell that part anyway, even though she already knew about it. Hearing about it a second time made her squeal with happiness as if she were hearing it for the first time again. Without warning, she started jumping up and giving him kisses all over the side of his head. Whoa, hey, Lucy. Ben laughed as he tried to wiggle free. His hand eventually made contact with her face and he managed to push her away from him. Lucy giggled as she settled down. Sorry. All this kissing talk just got me in a real kissy mood is all. A moment later, they arrived in front of Ben's house. Well, here we are, good sir. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must go interrogate your partner in crime, Lucy declared, letting go of Ben's arm. Wait, Ben said as she was turning to walk away. Home. You're going to see Gwen now? That's right. Lucy confirmed. This story is just so juicy, I gotta hear both sides of it. Well, she'll probably be asleep by the time you get there, right? Ben said, glancing at his watch. It had already been quite late when he dropped Gwen off at her house, and now it was even later. Lucy placed a finger on her chin thoughtfully. Home. I guess. Well, I guess I'll go annoy her tomorrow instead. You wanna stay here tonight then? It's kinda late to walk home. Lucy smiled and gave an extremely exaggerated gasp. Ben. You scoundrel. You just got done kissing one girl, and now you wanna spend the night with another one. I meant in the spare room, Lucy. Lucy laughed. I know. Your parents won't mind, right? Course not, they love you. I know. Everyone loves me. Lucy pulled out her phone and rapidly typed out a message. Aren't there? Now Camille knows where I've disappeared to. Okay, great. Come on in. Ben stepped up to his front door and opened it as quietly as he could, not wanting to wake his parents up. Lucy followed him inside, holding up her hands in a finger gun like she was a secret agent on a covert mission. Together, they made their way upstairs to the guest room. Again, Ben opened the door quietly and gestured for Lucy to head inside. "Good night," he said. Lucy gave him a quick hug and one last smooch on the side of the head. "Proud of you," she said, slipping past him into the room. "Night." Ben laughed quietly. "Thanks. See you in the morning." After shutting her door, he made his way over to his own room. As he got ready for bed, his mind turned back to thoughts of Gwen. He still couldn't believe what they'd done. Describing the whole thing to Lucy had further solidified it in his mind. He was happy about what he and Gwen were doing, and he didn't ever want it to stop. "Well, I'm weird." The next morning, Gwen slept in much later than usual. Part of it was because she didn't get to bed until late, but part of it was because of how blissful she'd felt the night before. The memory of her first kiss was still fresh in her mind, and it had resulted in some very pleasant dreams. When she woke up, she went downstairs. "Morning, Mom," she said, finding her mother in the kitchen. Natalie looked at her questioningly, then glanced at her watch. "Good morning, Gwen. Would you like something for breakfast?" "Yes, please." "Thank you," Gwen said, careful as always to be polite with her mother. She sat down at the table as her mother stood up. Propping her face up with an arm on the table, she sat there staring into space, wearing a satisfied smile as her mind drifted back to memories of her date with Ben. "You were out rather late again last night, weren't you?" Natalie asked, cracking eggs over a frying pan. Gwen didn't realize her mother was talking to her for a moment. Yeah, I was. Sorry about that." Her mother wasn't looking at her, but the look on her face was clearly one of disapproval. "You really shouldn't stay out quite so late. Even Bellwood can get dangerous at night." "Well, I didn't get a black belt for nothing," Gwen pointed out. Her mother turned to look at her, and Gwen shrunk under her gaze. Natalie sighed and went back to her cooking. "I'm sorry. I just worry about you." Gwen relaxed a little. "It's okay. I wasn't walking around alone or anything. I was with Ben all night." As soon as the words left Gwen's mouth, she started panicking inside. Logically, she knew that statement wasn't suspicious. At this point, it was no secret that she spent most of her free time with Ben. But somehow, she still felt like her mother might be able to piece together what was really going on. Gwen tried to act natural, keeping a straight face as Natalie glanced over at her again. "What were you and Ben doing so late?" The question sounded casual enough, but Gwen got the feeling her mother was probing. Since she sure as hell couldn't answer truthfully, she quickly tried to think of a lie. "We were, arguing." Given her history with Ben, she knew that would be believable. Natalie eyed her daughter curiously. "Arguing? What were you arguing about?" Gwen regretted her lie immediately, since now she had to think of a follow-up lie. She decided to keep it vague. Nothing important, really." "Well, it was important enough to keep you out late," Natalie said. Gwen felt like she was in an interrogation at this point, but she had to keep going. If her lies failed here, then her mother might figure out the truth somehow. Gwen opened her mouth, but no words came out. She felt tremendously pressured in a way she hadn't expected, and it was paralyzing her. Natalie didn't say anything for a moment as she scrambled the eggs in the pan. "Have you and Ben gone back to fighting again?" she asked. Gwen calmed down when her mother asked that question. There was something in her voice that let Gwen know she wasn't in trouble. Her mother thought she was fighting with Ben again, and that was concerning to her. "No," Gwen said quickly. It's nothing like that. We've already made up and everything. It was just a little argument, that's all. Natalie nodded. So you're still on good terms, then? Yes, Gwen said, smiling a little to herself. Very good terms. She once again felt instant regret at the way she'd said that. Her mother set her gaze upon her, looking more suspicious than ever all of a sudden. In a panic, Gwen reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, pretending to be distracted by something so she wouldn't have to look her mother in the eye. She hoped the guilt wasn't too obvious on her face. Natalie came over and placed a plate of eggs on the table in front of Gwen. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Gwen shook her head. No, Mom. Thanks for breakfast, she said with a forced smile, picking up the fork and beginning to eat. Natalie definitely still looked like she suspected something, but she didn't press the matter any further. You're welcome, she said before leaving the room. Gwen waited a few moments, listening for her mother in case she came back into the kitchen. When she didn't, Gwen exhaled, not having realized she'd been holding her breath. Oh my God! Up until that morning, Gwen had been secretly hoping her mother might actually be supportive of her relationship with Ben. After all, she was the one who'd helped her reconnect with him 4 years ago when she let her go on the summer trip with Maximum. But now, she had serious doubts about that. Being okay with them being friends probably didn't translate to being okay with them being a couple. Gwen realized her hand was shaking, the stress of the situation suddenly getting to her. She dropped her fork onto the plate and clasped her hands together, trying to calm herself down. She doesn't know. She has no reason to suspect us. Lucy quietly opened the door to Ben's bedroom. Ben. She whispered. He was still in bed, fast asleep, so Lucy sidled into the room and closed the door behind her. Creeping up to the side of his bed, she was preparing to do something to startle him awake. But when she got closer to him, she stopped. He's really handsome. Lucy smiled. It wasn't like she hadn't noticed before, but it still hit her every now and then when she looked at him. Gwen's so lucky. Kneeling down on the floor, she leaned forward to rest her arms and head on the side of Ben's bed. Last night, she hadn't been able to stop thinking about the news of his and Gwen's kiss. She'd asked Ben about it, but she could tell she wasn't gonna get much more out of him than she already had. Gwen had texted her to inform her, but Lucy wanted a chance to ask her about it too. She wanted to know exactly what Gwen was thinking and feeling at the time. They're both so lucky. Lucy sighed, deciding to kneel there for a bit. She wanted to wake him up so they could go hang out with Gwen, but she couldn't pull herself away from her thoughts. She'd become fixated on their most recent relationship development. It had happened so soon after she'd talked to them both about how they wanted to do it, so she felt she was somewhat responsible. Perhaps that was why she wanted to make sure it had been all right for both of them. She'd hate it if they thought it had been a mistake or that she'd pressured them into it. After spending a couple minutes thinking while she stared at him, Lucy realized Ben would probably think it was creepy for her to watch him sleep like this. Guess I should wake him up. Normally in this situation, Lucy would have a little fun somehow. She considered waking him up by screaming in his ear or by shape-shifting into someone else to pull a prank on him. But for some reason, she didn't feel like it this time. Hey, Ben. Lucy spoke softly, gently putting a hand on his shoulder and nudging him until he woke up. Ben woke up and seemed dumbfounded at the sight of her standing over him. Lucy smiled warmly, taking the look on Ben's face as a compliment. "Morning, sleepyhead." "Morning. Your parents left somewhere already. You wanna come downstairs? I can make us breakfast," Lucy offered. Ben narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Lucy couldn't tell if he wasn't awake enough yet to remember she'd spent the night there, or maybe he was expecting some kind of prank. "You're Lucy, right? Or are you some kinda shapeshifter?" "Yes. And yes." "Oh. Right." Lucy giggled. "What's the matter? Do I look different?" She struck a pose and flipped her hair, knowing how she must look with the morning light streaming over her. "No, you just seemed a bit different, I guess," Ben said. "But, whatever. I'm still half asleep." "All right, then, sleepyhead," Lucy said, smiling warmly. "You finish waking up. I'm gonna go make us something to eat." "Wait," Ben said, sitting up as Lucy headed for the door. "Home. Thank you." Ben rubbed his head, clearly still trying to wake up. "What happened last night?" "I'm gonna do something to repay you." Lucy felt a surge of pride. It seemed like she was getting the credit for helping them knock their relationship up a notch after all. "No problem, loverboy," she said, snapping her fingers and making finger guns at him as she left the room. "I'd do anything for you too." Lucy whistled to herself as she skipped down the sidewalk on the way to Gwen's house. She was going to spend the day with Ben and Gwen, which was one of her favorite ways to spend any day. It had been over a week since Ben and Gwen's first kiss. If anything, Lucy had been more excited by it than they were. But while they both tried to play it cool, she could tell the two of them were really happy to have taken their relationship to the next level. Forbidden love, so cool. Lucy finished her skipping by hopping up the few stairs of Gwen's front doorstep like she was playing hopscotch, landing with a spin on her last jump. Still with exaggeratedly whimsical movements, she leaned forward and knocked on the door. She stood there for a second before she remembered Gwen was okay with her just letting herself in, at least when she knew Lucy was coming ahead of time. So, she turned the doorknob and barged right in. "Lucy's here," she declared. "We're in here," Ben called from the next room. Lucy smiled at the sound of his voice. He'd gotten here before her, which meant he and Gwen had had a little alone time. Lucy giggled to herself at the implications of that. "Greetings, my favorite people," Lucy said as she entered the room. "Hey, Lucy," Ben and Gwen said in unison, making Lucy smile giddily at their synchronicity. "You guys ready to go?" Lucy asked. Ben and Gwen shared a knowing look. "Yes, but, there's something we want to give you first," Gwen said. Ben held up a tiny wrapped box. Lucy gasped. "A present? For me?" Excitedly, she leapt over Gwen's living room couch and charged at them. Before they could even react, she'd pulled them both into a hug /headlock. "Oh, you guys shouldn't have. This is so sweet." Ben and Gwen managed to unravel themselves from Lucy's grip without dropping the gift. "Geez, don't thank us yet. Maybe we got you a crappy gift," Ben said. Gwen made an appalled sound, lightly shoving him. Lucy laughed. "Anything you guys give me is something I'll treasure forever." "What's it for, anyway?" "It's not my birthday." "Well," Gwen said, clearing her throat. "Ben and I were talking the other day. And we decided we had to do something to thank you for everything you've done for us. Especially recently," she said, glancing at Ben for a moment before looking away and blushing. Lucy giggled. "You mean when you guys keythrist?" Shut up, Gwen said. Oh, I didn't really do anything there, Lucy said, waving a hand dismissively. You guys did all that on your own. Ben glanced at Gwen before responding. Well, irregardless. Regardless, Gwen corrected. The "ir" doesn't mean anything. Ben sighed. Dweeb. Regardless, we wanted to thank you. So, we got you this. Without any more fanfare, he held out the present. Lucy snatched it out of his hands and ripped the wrapping paper off immediately. Once the small box was uncovered, she opened it. When she saw what it was, she froze in disbelief. Is this? Amazed, she reached inside and held it up. It was a gold locket, identical to the ones Ben and Gwen secretly wore at all times. It's just like. Yep. Gwen said. It's just like ours. She and Ben both pulled out their lockets and held them up. Except one thing, Ben said. Open it. Lucy did as instructed. Inside the locket was the picture the three of them had taken in that photo booth at the mall. Lucy was in between them, looking surprised as Ben and Gwen kissed her on both her cheeks simultaneously. We managed to swipe it from your photo album to make a copy, Ben explained proudly. It. For once, Lucy was at a complete loss for words. She started to tear up as she gazed at the photo of her and her two favorite people. You mean a lot to us, Gwen said. We thought this was a good way to say that. So, do you like it? Ben asked. I love it. Lucy lurched forward and pulled Ben and Gwen into another group hug, overwhelmed by the emotions sweeping through her. I love you guys, she managed to say. Ben and Gwen each put an arm around her and spoke in unison. We love you, too. July, year -2. This is gonna be so awesome. Lucy squealed as she slid up the ramp into Camille's ship, carrying several bags in her large purple arms. Camille smiled at her. Got everything, sweetie? She asked. Yeah. Lucy dropped her bags onto the floor as the door closed behind her. I'm ready. She cheered. Camille nodded. All right. Now, she said, beginning to change shape. First, she shrunk down, her form becoming smooth and humanoid-shaped. Then, she changed color, effortless, taking on the appearance of a casually dressed human woman. Have you picked out your human form? She asked Lucy. Yeah. Watch. Closing her eyes, she pictured her human self in her mind, and with a little effort, she began to shapeshift as well. She'd been practicing for months, but she wasn't as skilled as Camille, so it took some time to get it right. She makes hair and clothing look so easy. But before long, she'd compacted her body and shrunk down into the shape of an 8-year-old human girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and 2 lines of freckles on each cheek that gave her the appearance of having whiskers. The clothes she'd picked out were a red skirt and a black sleeveless shirt with a white star on it. Once she was finished shapeshifting, she opened her eyes and examined her hands, smiling proudly. Tather, she declared, doing a little spin. What do you think? Pretty good, right, Camille? She asked, eager for her cousin's approval. Very nice, Camille said. You'll fit right in on Earth. A huge grin spread across Lucy's face at Camille's words, and she clapped her hands excitedly. I'm gonna be an Earth girl. How did you come up with this shape? Camille asked curiously. Ooh. Lucy bounced over to her bags, unzipping one of them and rifling through it. When she found what she was looking for, she bounced back over to Camille, clutching a comic book in each hand. "I love this one," she said, holding up a Teen Titans comic with Wonder Girl on the cover. "But also this one," she said, holding up a Justice League comic with Stargirl on the cover. Camille laughed. "You sure do love those superhero things," she remarked. Lucy nodded in agreement. "They're awesome. Can we get more comics when we get to Earth? And more DVDs? And more video games? And. Lucy tried to think of everything she wanted to get while she was on Earth. Camille had managed to send her plenty of media, but there was still so much to see. "Of course. We can get anything you like," Camille offered. "Have you really gone through everything from the last batch I sent you already?" Lucy nodded proudly. "I can't get enough of it. Everything on Earth is so fun, I just wanna see it all." "Well then, see it all we shall," Camille said with a smile. "Now why don't you put that stuff away while I start our takeoff?" "Okay." Lucy grabbed her things and skipped off around the corner. She found it difficult to carry so much stuff now that her body was much smaller, but she decided not to shapeshift any extra arms as practice for doing things as a human girl. Camille had told her they'd have to stay in disguise for the whole visit, and the last thing Lucy wanted to do was make trouble for her. She didn't fully understand everything about the situation, but she knew Camille was taking a lot of risks already. When Lucy got back to the cockpit, Camille was seated at the controls preparing for takeoff. "Ready to go?" Camille asked. Lucy gasped. "Can I drive? Can I? Can I?" Camille laughed. "How about you just press the button to engage liftoff?" "Eh?" Lucy leapt with joy. "Take a seat, copilot." Camille gestured to the seat next to hers. Lucy hurriedly sat down and strapped in. She was so excited, she couldn't stop herself from bouncing in her seat. "Ready when you are, sweetie," Camille told her. "Which one do I press?" "This one right here." Lucy immediately slammed her palm down on the button Camille was pointing to. All sorts of beeping and whirring sounds told her the ship was starting to take off. "It's gonna feel a little weird once we hit escape velocity and the G-forces really kick in, but just try to lean back and relax until we're out of the atmosphere." Camille's warning was unnecessary. Lucy wasn't scared at all. Nothing could have wiped the smile off of her face at that moment. As their spaceship launched, she screamed like she was riding the greatest roller coaster ever built. Again. Again. Lucy cheered once they'd reached orbit. Camille smiled. "You've never been off the planet before, right?" Lucy shook her head. "Well then, enjoy the view." Camille steered the ship to turn it around, bringing their home world into view. Lucy gasped in awe. "Woo-oo-oo-oo." Camille chuckled. "That's nothing. Wait till you see Earth. It's much bigger." She waited a moment while Lucy took in the sight, then turned the ship back around to get back on course. "Is it gonna be difficult to get there?" Lucy asked. "No, not really," Camille said. "Earth is really out of the way. Not even the Urchan or the Gromflomites bother with it, so we don't have to fly through any enemy space. Frankly, I don't get why Lenapa even cared about Earth to begin with." Lucy nodded, even though she didn't really understand. Camille pulled up a map on one of her control screens. She tapped it a few times, and some lines appeared on it that looked like it was charting a course. Lucy suddenly became excited again. "Are we gonna go hyperspace to get there?" "Yep," Camille said as she flipped a few switches and hit some buttons. We're all set to go FTL now. Can I press the button again? Be my guest. It's this one right here. Wahoo! Lucy cheered, slamming her fist down on the button. Woo-oo-oo-oo-oo! Lucy exclaimed as Earth came into view. As soon as she could, she unstrapped herself from her seat and rushed over to the window, pressing her face up against the glass. It looked nothing like her home planet. It was green and blue instead of ugly browns and purples. White clouds swirled around it, rather than the constant grey rain clouds they had. Water covered most of the planet's surface. It looked warm and inviting, like it must be teeming with life. Lucy felt Camille's hand on her shoulder. Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, Lucy said, still in awe. The two of them stood side by side, staring at Earth for a while as they slowly drifted towards it. Incredible. Before we land, I have a present for you, Camille said. Ooh, goody. What is it? What is it? Camille reached into her pocket and pulled something out. Hold out your hands. Lucy did as instructed, and Camille placed an object in her hands. What is it? Lucy asked, studying it. It's a phone. An Earth phone. Lucy gasped. So cool. Can I try it? Can I call you? What's your number? Camille laughed. My number's already in there. But it won't work up here. It needs cell towers. Wait until we land. After entering Earth's atmosphere and going through the landing procedure, Camille's ship touched down in a wide-open, grassy field. Lucy ran over to the exit door and started hopping up and down, waiting for Camille to open it and extend the landing ramp. Come on. Come on. Camille. Let's go. Let's go. Camille complied after a moment, hitting the button to open the door and let Lucy outside. Lucy didn't even wait for the ramp to finish extending before she ran to the end of it and hopped off, landing in the grass. She ran out into the field, jumping and spinning in no real direction, enjoying the feel of the wind and the sight of the gorgeous blue sky. Careful, Lucy. Camille called out as she made her way down the ramp. You're not used to the stronger gravity. Lucy could feel it too, but she didn't care. She decided to try out the phone Camille had given her. Camille's was the only number in the contacts, so she called her cousin, even though she was still in sight. Hello. Camille's voice could be heard both through the phone and from across the field as she played along with Lucy's phone call game. Camille. It's me. Hi. I'm talking to you over the phone. Lucy waved at her as she spoke. That's nice, sweetie, Camille said, chuckling a little as she waved back. Lucy turned around. She froze as she stared into the horizon. It was even more beautiful up close than it was in space. I'm gonna hang up now. Camille's voice came from right behind her. Lucy could hear her footsteps as she walked around her. Lucy. Taking her eyes off the beautiful scenery, Lucy turned to Camille. This is amazing, she said gratefully. Thank you. Camille smiled and gently pet Lucy's head. You're welcome, dear. Now come on, there's so much more to see. Lucy's first time riding in a car was almost as exciting to her as riding in a spaceship. Her burning curiosity gave her the need to explore every inch available to her in the passenger's seat. She giggled to herself as she pressed the button to make the window go up and down over and over again. Camille, sitting next to her and driving, was laughing along with Lucy's easy-to-amuse antics. How are your Earth languages coming along, Lucy? She asked. Great. Lucy said, So you can understand me if I talk like this? Camille asked slowly, switching from their own language to English. Lucy paused, smiling blankly at her cousin. I love you. She held up a peace sign as she finished, hoping to pass that off as a success. I love you too, Lucy, Camille said. Then she switched back to their language. You keep working on that. But let's stick with the universal translator for now, okay, dear? Oh, okay. Lucy reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny electronic device, switching it on. She usually kept the translator on when she watched the movies Camille sent back home to her, but sometimes she turned it off in an attempt to learn the language. Clearly she still had a lot more to learn. Lucy, look. Camille pointed out the front windshield. They were entering the city. Lucy gasped. Wow, so cool. She began rocking back and forth excitedly in her seat, straining the seat belt. Come on. Pull over. Pull over. Let's get out. I wanna see. I wanna see. Just a moment, Lucy, Camille said, driving a little further into the city. After a few minutes, she found a place to park. As soon as she unlocked the passenger door, Lucy ripped off her seatbelt and bolted outside. Lucy, wait! Camille shouted after her. Lucy had a look of pure joy on her face. She looked back and forth at everything, trying to take in a million sights at once. The buildings, the stalls, the cars, the people. Everything was just like in the movies. Crowds of people brushed past her, probably assuming she was just a little girl excited to see the big city for the first time. Camille! Lucy shouted, pointing at the crowd. Humans! Real humans! Lucy! Camille caught up to her and grabbed her hand, leaning in close. You can't say things like that, remember? Oh, right. Lucy clamped her hands over her mouth, remembering that most humans didn't even know about life outside of their own planet yet. Sorry. It's okay, Camille said. They looked around them, but no one seemed to be paying any attention to them. Now, you wanna take a look around? Yeah. Lucy said, leaping into the air. She took off, skipping a little ahead of Camille, who wasn't quite able to keep up with her energetic little cousin. She would have had to run if Lucy wasn't stopping to gawk at everything they passed. After a few minutes, they happened upon a street that seemed to be an outdoor market where people were walking around and shopping at the many stalls lining the street. You want something? Camille asked, catching up to Lucy for a moment. Food. Souvenirs. You name it. You can have whatever you like. Really? Really? Lucy looked around. There was so much to take in, and the more she saw, the more she wanted. But eventually, her gaze became fixed on an ice cream cart. She gasped, recognizing it from TV instantly. That's the tasty stuff. That. Over there. Ice cream. I want ice cream. Camille smiled, taking Lucy's hand in hers. All right, let's get some ice cream then. They walked over to the cart with Lucy pulling on Camille's arm, trying to get her there faster. Hello, The man at the stand greeted Camille. Would you and your daughter like some ice cream today? Lucy got a warm and fuzzy feeling from hearing that. Something about being mistaken for Camille's daughter felt good to her, so she decided not to correct the man. Wanting to see her cousin's reaction, she tilted her head up at her. Camille looked like she thought it was funny, if not a little bewildering. He. She's probably wondering if she made her human form look too old. Ice cream! Lucy shouted, throwing her hands up in the air. Camille laughed. Yes, thank you. We'd love some. She looked down at Lucy. What flavor would you like, sweetie? Chocolate. We'll have 2 scoops of chocolate in a cone and 1 scoop of strawberry in a cup, please, Camille said to the ice cream man. Coming right up, He scooped Lucy's ice cream first, then leaned over the cart to hand her the cone. Here you go, little lady. Lucy gasped as she took the cone from him. She held it in front of her face, staring at it in wonder. Say thank you, dear, Camille reminded her. Thank you, dear. Lucy said. Camille and the ice cream man laughed as he scooped up and handed her a cup of ice cream. Thank you very much, Camille said. Lucy was still just staring at the ice cream in her hand as they walked back into the crowd. It was amazing to her. Not only was it real Earth food, but it was supposedly some of the best Earth food there was. And you can just buy it, easy as that. Camille ate a spoonful of her strawberry ice cream. Try it. It's really good. Lucy nodded. She stuck her tongue out and took a long lick of the ice cream. Oh. How do you like it? Camille asked. This is the best thing ever. Lucy gave her ice cream several quick licks, overwhelmed by the deliciousness. I know. Earth has some of the best desserts in the universe. Wait until you try cake. Oh! Lucy exclaimed. Can we get cake next? Or can you only eat it on your birthday? Wait, what's my birthday on Earth's calendar? Is it today? Camille laughed. We'll get some cake before the end of your trip, don't worry. But let's not have too much dessert in one day. Oh! Lucy pouted, but the smile quickly returned to her face when she went back to eating her ice cream. Would you like to look around some more? Maybe we can get some nice souvenirs, Camille suggested. Yeah. Lucy agreed. The 2 of them spent the next few hours wandering around the city, seeing the sights and visiting little shops. True to her word, Camille bought Lucy everything she wanted. She was mostly interested in newly released comic books and the like, but also clothes and touristy stuff. Anything from Earth was a collectible to Lucy. By the end of the day, they were both carrying heavy bags of items they'd bought. So before they headed back to Camille's car, they decided to take a break and sit down on a bench overlooking the sea. I can't believe there's so much water here, Lucy said, staring out into the horizon. It's not even mud. Just pure water. Well, technically that's salt water. But yes, it's a lot cleaner than the water back home, Camille said, looking over at her cousin. What's on your mind, sweetie? Lucy didn't say anything for a minute, continuing to stare at the sea. A lot of people mistook you for my mom today, she said. Camille nodded, smiling a little. Yeah. I guess it's natural for them to assume that. You know, sometimes I wish you really were my mom. Camille's expression saddened. She scooted closer to Lucy and put an arm around her. I know what you're going through, Lucy, she said. My parents are just like yours. It can be hard to grow up living with people who are so single-minded. Are you ever coming back home? For good? Lucy asked, a tinge of sadness in her voice. Camille sighed. I don't think so. I can keep in contact with my parents, but I'd prefer not to be around them very much. Well, then I wanna stay here too. Lucy declared desperately. Please, Camille. Can I stay here with you? Hey, 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 Camille said soothingly, pulling Lucy in closer. I understand. This place seems great on the surface. But, I'm sorry, Earth still isn't safe for aliens like us yet. If we weren't disguised right now, people would be afraid of us. And it doesn't help that most of the other Lenopans on the planet right now are aliens they really should be afraid of. After all, we've been fighting with Earth's interplanetary defense force for generations now. But you're here. Lucy shouted. You're here, aren't you? I know, I know. Camille slid off the bench and knelt in front of Lucy, clasping her hand in hers. Soon, Lucy. I promise. I'm trying to end this conflict. I'm gonna make this planet safe for you. And when I do, you can come back and live here with me. Lucy sniffled, rubbing her eyes. You mean it? I do, Camille swore. No matter what happens between us and the rest of our family, I will always protect you. I promise. Hearing Camille's words, Lucy fell forward into a hug. There weren't many people in her family who would be willing to do something like that for her, but Camille had always been different, and it gave Lucy hope. Thank you. They sat on the bench together for a bit longer after that. Lucy was glad to have some time to rest and recover before moving on to what Camille had planned next. Feeling better, dear? MHM. Lucy nodded, staring off into the distance contentedly, the beauty of this strange new planet once again filling her mind. Splendid, Camille said, standing up and ruffling her little cousin's hair. Because, if you're up for it, there's someone I'd really like you to meet. After bringing all the stuff they were carrying back to Camille's car, they drove to a different part of the city. Once parked, Camille got out of the car and took Lucy by the hand, leading her into an apartment building. Oh! It's an elevator! Lucy exclaimed after Camille pressed the up button. We have these back home, Camille pointed out. Yeah, but they look different. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Lucy immediately rushed inside. Can I push the button? Can I? Can I? Camille laughed. You can get excited about anything, can't you? Well, sure. Go ahead, dear. 6th floor. Lucy stared at the buttons. The universal translator she carried only worked for spoken language, not written, so none of the buttons appeared as readable characters to her. Ah, wait, I know this. That's the one, right? Camille nodded. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lucy counted off and then shouted as she pressed the right button. Very good, Camille said, smiling amusedly. After a short ride, the elevator stopped and the doors slid open again. Lucy rushed out as quickly as she'd rushed in. The first thing she did was find a window and press her face against it. Whoa! Lucy exclaimed. You can see so much from here. Camille chuckled. This building is much taller than 6 floors. Actually, before we leave, we'll have to take you to the top of the tallest building in the city. You won't believe the view. Yeah. Lucy cheered. Glancing around excitedly, she took off running around the corner and down the hall. Other way, Lucy. Camille called after her. Yeah. Lucy shouted again, running back the other way. When she got to the end of the hall, she heard Camille's voice from several paces behind her. It's this one. Lucy turned around and ran back to her. Finally. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? You'll see. Camille knocked on the door. Lucy bounced on her feet, waiting excitedly. After a moment, the door opened. A handsome, dark-haired man stood in the doorway. When he saw who it was, he smiled. "Ah, welcome back." The man looked down at Lucy. "And this must be your little cousin." He stepped back and held the door open. "Why don't you two come inside?" "Thank you," Camille said, tapping Lucy on her shoulder. "Oh. Thank you," Lucy said as well. Once they were all inside, the man closed the door. Lucy stood at Camille's side, her little hand clutching the fabric of her shirt as she looked up at him curiously. "Joel, this is my cousin, Lucy," Camille said, doing introductions. "Lucy, this is my boyfriend, Joel." Lucy's eyes opened wide. She looked back and forth between Joel and Camille several times, unable to believe what she'd just heard. She could tell this man was not a Lenopen. You have a boyfriend. A human boyfriend. Lucy clamped her hand over her mouth, worried that she'd just blown their secret. But Joel just laughed. Lucy looked at him in confusion, still nervous. "Don't worry, I know you guys are aliens." Lucy turned to Camille for confirmation. Camille nodded. "He's a plumber, part of Earth's interplanetary defense force." Lucy jumped and hid behind Camille. "You mean his?" Joel held up his hands defensively. "But it's all right, our job is to stop alien invaders and criminals. Being an alien isn't a crime by itself, and Camille's got passes for you two to be here." "Really?" Lucy asked hesitantly, peeking out from behind her cousin. "Really?" Lucy stood still for a second, then jumped in front of Camille and bounded over to Joel. "Wow. You're Camille's boyfriend. And you're like a secret agent space warrior. Do you have a gun? Or a laser gun? Or one of those 10-foot swords? Or a giant robot battle suit?" "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Joel stepped back, taken off guard by Lucy's sudden change in demeanor and her rapid-fire barrage of questions. "What kinda TV have you been sending her?" he asked Camille. "Oh, all kinds of things," Camille said, chuckling lightly. "Well, anime was a mistake. So you're from Earth, right?" Lucy said, continuing with her questions. "Well, yeah, all humans are," Joel answered. "Eh?" Lucy jumped, doing a little twirl in the air out of excitement. "Oh, let's see, how did you become a plumber?" "Well, you're a curious little thing, aren't you?" Lucy, Camille said, stepping up and placing a hand on her cousin's shoulder. "Let's try to hold back a little, okay? We didn't come here to bother Joel with all these questions." "Oh, I don't mind," Joel assured her. "I'd be happy to tell you everything you wanna know about me and my home planet," he said to Lucy. Lucy gasped. "Really? You bet." "Eh?" Camille smiled lovingly at her boyfriend. "All right, then. Why don't you two have your little Q&A session while I get started on dinner?" Lucy spent over an hour firing off questions for Joel, who took it all in stride and seemed happy to indulge the young girl's curiosity. The questioning continued throughout dinner, with Camille joining in to tell Lucy everything she'd learned so far about the planet as well. She seemed quite happy that Lucy and Joel were getting along so well. Lucy ended up enjoying their talk with Joel so much, she was practically begging Camille to stay longer once she said it was time to leave. She was disappointed, but by the time they were back in the elevator, she was back to her usual bubbly self. "Are you in love with him?" Lucy asked. Camille seemed a little taken aback by the suddenness of the question, but she answered it anyway. "Yes," she said. "I am." Lucy gasped, noticing the way her cousin was blushing a little. "Eh?" she shouted as she jumped into the air. "That's so cool. I wanna fall in love too." "You will. One day." "Do you think I can fall in love with a human too?" Lucy asked. "Of course," Sweetie Camille encouraged her. "You can fall in love with anyone you want." May, Year 4, Part 1. "This stuff is great," Gwen said, taking a bite out of her cotton candy. "Are you sure you should be doing that?" Ben asked quietly. "Doing what?" Gwen asked, her mouth half full. "You know, holding my arm." Gwen hadn't really realized it, but she was clutching his arm in a very girlfriend-like manner. It had just seemed natural to do so, since they were on a date at the boardwalk. In fact, over the last month and a half or so, the two of them had gotten pretty used to being close like this. However, they still worried about acting this way in public, especially during the day when there were so many people around. They'd lasted this long without bumping into anyone they knew while on a date, but the risk was always there. It's fine." Gwen blushed a little as she spoke. "I haven't seen anyone we know. And even if there are other kids from school here, it's not like many of them know both of us," she said, clutching his arm a little tighter. The idea of getting caught was still scary to her, especially now that her mother seemed to suspect them, but she still didn't want to let go of Ben's arm. Holding on to him made her feel safe, even if she knew it was the cause of the risk in the first place. Ben smirked. "Whatever you say, dweeb. I never get tired of you acting cute like this." "Hey. Shut it, doofus." Her hand gave his chest a little smack as she acted indignant, but really she was just embarrassed. As much as she liked hearing him say things like that, she still wasn't quite used to Ben openly complimenting her instead of teasing her. Ben chuckled. "You know you love it. You know you, shut up." "Ooh, no clever comeback. Do I win?" "You never win." Their play fight continued as they walked down the boardwalk together, and it distracted them as they rounded the corner of a snack bar and nearly collided with a group of girls walking together in a line. Luckily, everyone stopped before anyone hit each other. "Oh, sorry," Ben started to apologize, but he stopped mid-sentence. Gwen was confused for a second, but then she recognized who they'd almost run into. Julie, Christina, and Ally were right in front of them. Ben and Gwen stood perfectly still, both of them maintaining straight faces. However, Gwen was internally freaking out. "Did we just get caught?" "Ben," Julie said happily. "Hey. Funny running into you here." Yeah. "Hey, Julie." Ben was acting pretty natural, but Gwen could tell he was nervous. "Christina, Ally. Good to see ya. Oh, and, this is Gwen, right?" Julie cut him off, turning to Gwen. "I've heard so much about you," she said before turning to her friends. "This is Gwen, Ben's cousin." Christina and Ally looked very, very confused. Their eyes flickered between Julie and the scene in front of them. "His cousin?" Ally asked. Her tone of voice made it sound like she was asking, "Are you sure?" Ben and Gwen shared a look, suddenly realizing that she was still holding on to his arm. "Oh!" Ben exclaimed, shaking Gwen off of him. "See? I told ya to quit grabbing my arm, dweeb." "Excuse me?" Gwen asked. "I'll grab your arm whenever the hell I want, doofus," she said, grabbing his arm again and twisting it behind his back. "Ow. Hey." Ben complained, trying to shake her off of him. Julie and her friends started laughing, causing Ben and Gwen to stop what they were doing. Wait. Did that make it seem normal to them? They let go of each other, taking a step to the side to put some distance between them. Wow. You're exactly like Ben described you, Julie said to Gwen. Except he never mentioned how pretty you were. Don't compliment her too much. She'll let it go to her head, Ben warned. At least I've got something in my head, Gwen quipped. Julie and the others laughed again. It's great to finally meet you, Julie said, stepping forward and reaching her arm out. Gwen shook Julie's hand. Yeah. You too. Ben did tell you about me, right? About how we dated. Yeah, of course, Gwen said, not enjoying the reminder. Oh, I figured as much. He's told me all about you, too. He has he? Gwen shot a glare at Ben. Julie laughed. Don't worry, it was mostly good things. Hey, as long as we're all here, we should hang out. We were just about to head to those booths over there. You wanna come with us? Ben began to answer. No, Gwen said. We were actually heading out just now. We gotta meet our parents for dinner later. Oh, that's too bad. We should definitely hang out some other time, though, Julie suggested. Sure, I'd love to. Gwen agreed, hoping her smile wasn't too fake. She didn't have any real problems with Julie, but seeing her just made her uncomfortable. Cool. All right, well, see you later, guys. Julie waved and walked past them. Christina and Ally did the same as they followed along with her. See ya, guys. Nice meeting you. As soon as the others were out of sight, Ben and Gwen both let out a sigh of relief. Let's get out of here, Ben suggested. Yeah. Trying not to look too suspicious, they hurried back to the entrance of the boardwalk. After passing through the gate, they stopped for a breather as soon as they found a more deserted area. Oh God, Ben said exasperatedly. That was close. Way too close, Gwen agreed. Ben felt his arm. Off, he moaned in pain. And what was that back there? My arm still hurts. Gwen smirked. Sorry, Vs. After a moment, she realized something that made her glare at him. So that was exactly how you described me to her, huh? Well, as you just clearly demonstrated, I wasn't exactly wrong, was I? Gwen opened her mouth to respond, but ended up laughing instead. Sorry, she apologized again. Ben sighed. Well, this was bound to happen eventually. Frankly, given how shitty our luck tends to be, I'm surprised we lasted this long without a close call like that. Yeah, Gwen agreed. Should I tell him about my mom? She considered it, but now didn't seem like the right time. Given how afraid Ben was of her mother, she was worried he might overreact. But I shouldn't have been holding your arm like that in such a public place. I'll be more careful from now on. Me too, Ben agreed. So, you wanna go someplace else? Somewhere more private? Gwen asked. Ben smiled. Sure. That sounds better. Oh. I wonder what she's up to. Gwen had been on her way to the library to study during her free period, but just as she was about to turn the corner, she spotted Lucy at the other end of the hallway. She smiled, intending to head over and see if she was free too, but she stopped when she realized Lucy was talking to someone. It was a boy from their class. Gwen couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could tell from their body language that the conversation was pretty flirty. Guess I shouldn't interrupt them. She set out on her way again, walking around the corner towards the library. However, her curiosity soon got the best of her, and she found herself turning around and heading back to try to listen. It took a moment, but from where she stood, she could just barely make out what they were saying. "Oh, you sure?" the boy asked, sounding a bit disappointed. "Yeah, sorry. Really? Like, I would, but I kinda got another guy on my mind right now, you know," Lucy said, sounding apologetic. "Yeah, that's fine, I totally get it. Just thought I'd ask. But hey, you know, if you're ever up for it, just let me know. You got it? Alright, I'll see ya around." "Yep, see ya." Gwen heard footsteps. She thought it would be best if she continued on like she hadn't heard anything, but something Lucy said had gotten her attention. Hoping that the footsteps getting closer were Lucy's, Gwen rounded the corner. A look of surprise registered on Lucy's face for an instant, but she quickly recovered with a smile. "Gwen." "Hey." "Hey." Gwen returned the greeting. She looked past Lucy down the hall to see if the guy was still there, but he wasn't in sight. "Did that guy just ask you out?" Lucy looked over her shoulder, then gave Gwen an awkward smile. "You mean Jacob?" "Ha ha, yeah, kinda. But you said no." Gwen clarified. Lucy nodded. "Because there's another guy on your mind." Lucy toyed with her hair as she let out a short laugh. "Ah, you overheard that, huh? Well, I was just trying to let him down lightly, you know." "Really?" Lucy nodded again. "Welp, I better get to class. I should have been there like 5 minutes ago. I'll see ya after school, Kay." Lucy walked past Gwen, but turned to keep facing her as she did. "We're still hanging out with Ben today, right?" she asked, walking backwards now. "Ben?" "Ah, yeah," Gwen confirmed. "Great. See ya later." Lucy waved. Gwen thought hard about that encounter for the rest of her free period. Was she lying to him, or to me? Lucy had seemed a little nervous, but that might have just been because the situation was awkward. But Lucy was usually pretty good at dealing with awkwardness, and Gwen suspected she was normally more honest with guys. She hadn't exactly seemed like she was lying, but Gwen knew just how good of an actor Lucy was. But more importantly, assuming Lucy did have a guy on her mind, Gwen could only think of one person it could be. Ben. She didn't want that to be the case, so she tried to think of who else it might be. Lucy had tons of guy friends at school, and pretty much all of them seemed like they'd go out with her in a second. If it were one of them, surely they'd be dating already. Maybe Lucy's waiting for him to make the first move. Gwen shook her head at that thought. Lucy wouldn't wait like that, she'd just go for it. Maybe it's not a guy from school. Lucy probably knew people from all over town at this point, but Gwen didn't see how it would change anything if she knew him from someplace else. But even so, if she were into somebody, why wouldn't she talk to her about it? The only explanation Gwen could come up with was that it was somebody Lucy couldn't talk to her about, and the only guy who fit that description was Ben. No, that can't be right," Gwen said under her breath. Realizing she'd spoken out loud to herself, she lowered her head and looked around the library. No one seemed to be paying any attention to her. They'd probably assume she was just talking about the notes she had laid out in front of her on the table. But seriously, no. Gwen didn't want to believe that she'd stumbled into some sort of super weird love triangle. It didn't even make sense to her. Why would she put in all that effort to get me and Ben together if she liked him too? She sighed. As much as she wished she could just forget this whole thing, she knew she wouldn't be able to. She had to find out for sure, or this was going to eat away at her. Guess we'll see how things go with Ben today. You sure you can't stay longer? Ben asked as Lucy made her way out the door. Oh, that's sweet, Lucy teased. But nah, I gotta get going. Enjoy your alone time, she said, giving them a wink. Ben liked the suggestion. He glanced over at Gwen to see her reaction, but she had a strange look on her face. It was like she was trying to analyze Lucy. Weird. She's been doing that all day. Okay. Well, see ya, Ben said, waving to Lucy. Bye guys. Lucy said. The door shut behind her as she left. Well, since we're alone now. So, what do you wanna do now? Ben asked. Home. Gwen turned her head. Oh. Here, let's go over to the couch for a sec, she said, taking Ben's hand and leading him into the living room. I like where this is going, Ben said with a grin. Gwen stopped in her tracks, pausing to look at him in confusion. Oh. You mean, no. Not right now, she said. Oh, man. Come on. I need to talk to you about something. Gwen sat down on the couch, patting the seat beside her. What? What do you mean? Ben's expression changed as he went to sit down. Did I piss her off? Gwen looked towards the door Lucy had left through, as if she were expecting her to still be there. Well, it's about Lucy. Yeah. What about her? Gwen hesitated, but she continued after letting out a sigh. Now, I don't really know for sure, but I think she might have a thing for you, I guess. Ben chuckled. Well, of course she does. She's been very clear on that. Gwen gave him an unamused look. Oh, what, like she doesn't relentlessly flirt with you too? Ben said, preemptively defending himself. Gwen sighed. Yes, she does. But that's not really what I mean. What do you mean, then? Well, you know how before Lucy moved to Bellwood, she was always dating a lot. Ben nodded. Don't you think it's odd that she hasn't dated anyone since she moved here? Ben thought about it. He hadn't noticed it before, but it was kind of strange. You sure she wasn't lying about how much she dated back then? She wasn't lying, Gwen said. Joel and Camille have said enough to back her up on that. Well, maybe the guys at your school are intimidated by her. It can be hard to ask a girl out, especially one as hot as her. Gwen gave him an even more unamused look. What? She's a shapeshifter. Of course she's gonna make herself look good. Gwen rolled her eyes and shook her head, but she moved on. Guys have definitely been asking her out. She's really popular at school. I overheard a guy asking her out earlier today, even. That's what got me thinking about all this. You mean she turned the guy down? Gwen nodded. And she said she had another guy on her mind right now. You know, she was probably just saying that so he wouldn't feel so bad about getting shot down, Ben pointed out. I know, and that's what she said too. But I don't think Lucy would lie like that. Ben put his hand to his chin, trying to work this out. Okay, well, if she was telling the truth to that guy, how do you know the guy she's into isn't just some other guy at school? Does Lucy seem like the kind of girl who'd be too shy to ask a guy out? He could be dating someone else right now. If that were the problem, why wouldn't she have mentioned it to us? Maybe she just doesn't feel like dating anyone right now. Gwen sighed frustratedly. She did once mention to me that she's been too busy to date lately. See? There you go, Ben said, thinking the issue had been resolved. But that doesn't seem like her. Gwen insisted. Think about it. Have you ever met anyone more into romance than Lucy? She'd make time for dating if she really wanted to. Ben sighed and leaned back on the couch. He wasn't exactly convinced, but Gwen raised a lot of good points. But would I really be lucky enough for two girls to fall in love with me? Ben smirked at that ridiculous thought, but quickly put on a straight face to avoid another death glare from Gwen. Okay, so what do you want me to do about it? Tell her to stop liking me. Gwen was silent for a moment. I'm not sure. But we have to do something. Lucy's done too much for us. We can't just let her suffer like this. She doesn't seem like she's suffering to me. But you don't know what she's going through, Gwen said, speaking very seriously. I know what it's like to see the person I'm in love with be with someone else, she said quietly. Oh. Ben didn't know how to respond to that. It was clear she was talking about having to watch him date Julie, but he didn't know if her feelings for him went that far back. I see what you're saying. Then, why don't you use that? Talk to her about it. I think we should talk to her together, Gwen suggested. No, Ben said, shaking his head. Whether you're right or not, don't you think it'll be way more awkward if I'm there when you ask her about it? Good point, Gwen admitted, seeming a little surprised by Ben's people skills. Great. Besides, I'm sure you're overthinking it. This is all probably some big misunderstanding. Gwen rubbed her temple, sighing defeatedly. You really shouldn't write this off as nothing so quickly. But, you do have a point. Okay. That's settled, then Ben said. So? Gwen furrowed her brow. So what? You know, Ben said, looking at her suggestively. We're still alone. Are you kidding me? What? What about this conversation made you think I was in the mood for that? Okay, Ben held up his hands in surrender. Geez, lighten up. Whatever, doofus. Despite Gwen's determination to handle this matter directly, it still took her a few days to work up the courage to confront Lucy about it. She spent the rest of the week second-guessing herself, thinking she wanted to be certain before doing anything. But eventually, she came to the realization that she would never be certain until she asked Lucy. That weekend, Gwen walked to Lucy's house. When she arrived at the front door, she rang the bell, but nobody answered. She didn't know Lucy's schedule very well, so she figured Lucy could be anywhere right now. But just as she was thinking she might have to come back later, she heard music. It was soft, but the sounds of classical music were definitely coming from inside. Home. Gwen remembered that Lucy played the violin. She must be practicing right now. She considered turning around and leaving anyway, as it might have been rude to interrupt her, but she stopped herself. If she put this off again, she might continue to do so every chance she got until it was too late. So, bracing herself for a probably awkward conversation, she turned the doorknob and let herself in. The music was immediately much clearer as Gwen stepped into the house. She stopped for a moment and listened. It was beautiful. She's really good. Even though Gwen liked classical music, she didn't know it well enough to recognize the piece, but it sounded like something from Beethoven. Following the music, she walked down the hall in search of its source. Lucy's house was bigger than she thought, and she came to a couple of back rooms that she'd never been in before. One door was closed, and the music seemed to be emanating from there. "I'll just wait until she's done with this song." Gwen leaned against the wall and listened, pulling her necklace out of her shirt so she had something to fiddle with while she waited. She had no idea how long Lucy had been playing the violin, but she seemed to have a real talent for it. Gwen ended up so entranced by the music, it took her several minutes to realize she'd been listening to two instruments. Either someone else was in there with her playing the piano, or Lucy was using a recording to accompany her. Either way, the two synced up beautifully. After the big finish, Gwen couldn't stop herself from clapping. "Home. Who's out there?" Gwen heard a familiar voice say. "I don't know," came Lucy's voice. "Guess we have a fan club now." The door opened. Lucy was standing there, wearing a beautiful white dress and holding her violin. She gasped excitedly. "Gwen. Hey." She ran forward and gave her a hug. "Lucy, that was amazing," Gwen told her. "I can't believe I've never heard you play before." "Oh, thanks." Lucy stepped back, looking rather pleased to have received a compliment from her cousin. "Oh. Come inside and meet my accompanist." She took Gwen by the hand and pulled her into her music room. "Tartha," she said. "Emily." Inside the music room, Gwen's grade school friend sat in her wheelchair in front of the piano. "Oh, hey Gwen," Emily said. "How did we sound?" "Great," Gwen told her. "I didn't know you two played together." "Really? I could've sworn I mentioned it," Lucy said. "But yeah, we like to practice together. We've performed a couple times since I've moved here, too. I'd have invited you, but you were busy both times." "Oh," Gwen said. "Well, sorry to interrupt. I just came by to ask you about something, but I can come back later when you guys are finished practicing." "No, it's all right. We were just about done anyway," Emily said. "My dad should be coming by to pick me up in about 20 minutes or so." "Well, as long as I'm not interrupting." Emily tilted her head curiously. "What's that?" "What's what?" Gwen asked. "That," Emily repeated, pointing. Gwen hadn't realized it, but she was still wearing her necklace openly, and she'd been nervously toying with it to deal with the awkwardness of interrupting them like this. "Oh. Just a necklace," she said. "It's nothing." As she spoke, she made a move to conceal it back under her shirt. However, as she did, the locket suddenly came loose, falling to the ground and sliding across the floor. "Shit. Whoops. I got it," Emily said, leaning over to pick up the locket. Gwen leaned forward and stuck out her hand reflexively, but she managed to stifle herself before shouting no. She tried to laugh off her clumsiness and stepped closer to Emily. "Ha, yeah. Thanks, let me." "Oh cool, it opens up," Emily said, examining the locket. Before Gwen had a chance to stop her, the locket clicked open. Gwen froze, unable to do anything while she waited for Emily to react. It felt like she was taking a long time, like she was also unclear what she was supposed to think of what she was seeing. "Oh. It's you and your cousin. That's cute," she said finally. "Isn't it?" Lucy said, leaning over in front of Emily. Mercifully, she grabbed the locket out of her hand and tossed it back to Gwen. "Careful. Don't wanna lose that." Gwen caught it. "Thanks," she said, hurriedly reattaching it to her necklace. "All right. Well, let's all hang out for a bit until Emily's dad gets here," Lucy declared, sliding behind Emily's chair and wheeling her towards the door. Gwen stepped out of the way to let them through, then followed them into the living room. "I'll grab some snacks," Lucy said before skipping off to the kitchen. Now alone with Emily, Gwen felt a little awkward, and it wasn't just because of the locket incident earlier. Even though she'd known Emily for years, she'd very rarely seen her outside of school. The fact that she'd become friends with Lucy without her even noticing, it made Gwen feel like a bad friend. "So, how have you been?" Gwen asked, taking a seat on Lucy's couch. Emily smiled. "Fine. I've been doing well in all of my recitals and competitions lately. Actually, your cousin's been a huge help." Gwen chuckled. "Yeah, Lucy's pretty reliable like that. She's done a lot for me lately too." She smiled to herself as her thoughts turned to Ben, but she regained her focus before saying anything weird. "So when did you and Lucy start hanging out?" she decided to inquire. Emily shrugged. "Pretty soon after she showed up at our school, really. She wasn't kidding when she said we'd be friends." She laughed a little. "I mean, we didn't hang out a ton at first. But once we started practicing together, it became a fairly regular thing." "Cool," Gwen said with a nod. "You guys really did sound fantastic, by the way." "Thanks." There was another awkward pause. Gwen could tell Emily was looking at her sort of funny, and she opened her mouth like she was going to ask something, but she didn't. What is it?" Gwen asked, a little worried, but trying to sound casual. Emily hesitated again. Are you and..." "Oh. What?" Gwen asked. "You and Ben. Are you?" "Oh, never mind." "No, what? Seriously, tell me." Gwen was getting anxious. She knew she should probably have just let the subject drop, but it sounded like Emily was suspicious of her and Ben's relationship. If she was, Gwen wanted to find out for sure, and denying it now might be able to halt her suspicions. No, it's stupid." Gwen finally noticed Emily looked really uncomfortable, and pushing her to ask her question probably wasn't helping. "Well, can't say I blame her." Deciding to let it drop, Gwen gave a shrug and leaned back in her chair. However, she was not nearly as calm as she was trying to look. "That's yet another person who suspects us. Her mother, probably Ben's friends, and now Emily." The number of people who could potentially find out about them was increasing much too fast for Gwen's liking. "Why'd I have to drop that damn locket?" Luckily, the next awkward silence didn't last much longer. "Snack time," came Lucy's voice as she skipped back into the room holding a bowl of assorted chips. "Ooh, nice. Bring it here," Emily said, reaching for the bowl. Lucy hopped over to Emily and handed her the bowl, then sat down on the couch next to her. She looked over at Gwen, so Gwen tried to silently communicate her distress. Lucy gave her an understanding nod, as if she'd been expecting this to happen. "So, did you tell her about how we started practicing together?" Lucy asked Emily. Yeah," Emily said. "We were just talking about that. She said you guys started near the beginning of the year," Gwen said, glad that Lucy had strategically steered the conversation in a more neutral direction. Lucy nodded. "I'd just started playing the violin, and when she told me she played piano, I knew we were just destined to play together." "You'd just started? What made you wanna suddenly try the violin?" Gwen asked. Wise words from a wise dog. "What?" Lucy laughed to herself, reaching into Emily's lap for some chips. As Gwen sat there watching Lucy and Emily, a scary thought creeped into her mind. She saw the two of them as completely separate parts of her life. Keeping the parts of her life separate was something she was used to, especially given all the alien and magic adventures she'd had to keep secret from her parents in the past. But now she also had her relationship with Ben. That was a whole new part of her life. Lucy and Emily had met. Aliens had come to Bellwood a few times. Different parts of her life kept colliding unexpectedly. With so many people becoming suspicious of us, how long will it be before my life with Ben collides with another part of my life too? Gwen waved goodbye to Emily as her car pulled out of Lucy's driveway. "See you at school, Emily," Lucy called out. Gwen crossed her arms and stepped back from the doorway. She was a little upset with herself for how she'd handled the situation with Emily. They weren't exactly close, but they'd known each other for a long time. The situation had ended up much too awkward, and Gwen felt like it was her fault. "So, what did you need to talk about?" Lucy asked, shutting the front door. Gwen blinked. "Oh. Right." She'd been so preoccupied, she'd forgotten why she had originally come over to Lucy's house. "Can we go up to your room?" she asked. They were home alone now, but Gwen still felt like this would be easier to talk about somewhere even more private. Lucy smirked and raised an eyebrow. "I like where this is going." "Shut up, you perv," Gwen said, nonchalantly flicking Lucy's forehead. "Ow." Lucy put her hands where she'd hit her, then giggled. "All right, fine. Spoil sport." She turned and skipped up the stairs, leading Gwen up to her room. Once there, Lucy let Gwen into her room and closed the door behind them. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Even though she'd been joking around and skipping happily just moments ago, she sounded serious and concerned now. She must have figured Gwen had a reason for wanting to talk in private. Gwen hesitated. She'd considered several different ways to approach this, but already she was struggling to find the right words. "Lucy, I need to ask you about some things. And I want you to be completely honest with me, even if you think I won't like the answer." Lucy had fully transitioned into serious mode now. She looked a little nervous, like she wasn't sure if Gwen needed her help or was about to scold her for something. "Okay," she said with a nod. "Are you okay with me dating Ben?" Gwen asked. Lucy paused, then laughed a little. "Gwen, we've been over this. I don't care that you're cousins. After all this time, what makes you think I'd start doubting you guys now?" "That's not what I mean," Gwen said. "Are you jealous?" Lucy's smile faded. "Jealous? What? What do you mean?" Gwen took a deep breath. This was going to be the most awkward thing she'd done in a while, and that was saying something. "I need to know, do you have feelings for Ben too?" Lucy froze. Gwen had never seen her so still. It was like she was trying to process something in her head, but it just wasn't working. "Lucy, please. You can tell me. I know it's weird, but this has been bothering me lately." Lucy cracked a very forced smile. "Look, I already told you I'm totally fine with you dating Ben. You guys don't need to worry about me. I'm fine, really." Gwen stared deeply into Lucy's eyes. Without a word, she made it very clear that she wouldn't accept anything but the truth. Lucy's fake smile faded. She backed up into her bed, almost tripping onto it as she sat down. Her gaze was no longer fixed on Gwen as she stared off into space. She looked like she was about to have another breakdown. Lucy. Lucy, what's wrong? Gwen moved toward her, suddenly very worried by the way Lucy was acting. Lucy. Say something, she said, grabbing Lucy's hand. This is bad, Lucy said in a quiet voice. It's okay, Gwen assured her. No, it's not, Lucy insisted. This wasn't supposed to happen. Lucy, it's fine. Really, I understand. Ben's a great guy. And we're not gonna fight over him or anything, all right? This doesn't change anything between us. Yes, it does. Lucy pulled her hand away from Gwen, the panic on her face becoming more evident. Lucy, look, I'm really sorry. I know what it's like to see the one you love be with someone else, but it's not just Ben, Lucy said more quietly. What? Gwen was confused. It's both of you. What do you mean? It's both of you, Lucy repeated. Gwen flinched at Lucy's shouting, but then her words sank in and realization dawned on her. Oh. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Lucy said. And you weren't supposed to find out. She stood up and walked to the other side of the room, rubbing her hands together nervously. I ruined everything. Just when you guys finally get together, of course I have to go and just immediately screw it all up. Lucy, what are you even talking about? Gwen asked forcefully, completely at a loss for what was going through Lucy's head. Lucy was pacing back and forth now as she cursed herself. You two. You and Ben. Lucy insisted. You're gonna feel guilty being together now. You're gonna feel like you're hurting me, and that's gonna make your whole relationship feel sour. I ruined it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lucy. Gwen grabbed Lucy by the shoulders and forced her to look at her. Lucy. It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong and I'm not mad at you. You just need to calm down for a second, okay? Lucy sniffled, a few tears leaking down her face. She nodded, but didn't say anything. Okay. Good. Let's sit back down, all right? Gwen said, leading Lucy back over to the bed. They both sat there in silence for a moment. Gwen wasn't sure how she had expected this conversation to turn out, but it certainly wasn't like this. I just wanted to help you, Lucy said quietly. You did. You really did, Gwen assured her. You know, I never really thought about what came after. After what? All the best romance stories end when they finally get together. And then they just live happily ever after. I thought when I helped you and Ben get together, my work would be done, and I could just step back and move on. I didn't think there would be anything else after. Gwen was perplexed. She'd experienced before just how difficult it could be to understand Lucy's thought process, but this was something else entirely. Lucy, if you're worried about me and Ben, don't be. He and I are doing really well, all things considered. You liking us that way isn't gonna hurt us. And it's not gonna change anything between you and me, or you and him, or all three of us either, okay? Lucy paused, then nodded her head slowly. Okay. That makes me feel better. So, what can I do to help? Gwen asked. Nothing, Lucy said quickly. Really? As long as it won't bother you and Ben, I can deal with it on my own. It's just a crush. I've had lots of them before. I'll move on before you know it. Trust me. She shot Gwen an unconvincing smile. Gwen eyed Lucy suspiciously. Her words seemed so genuine, but she could never tell with Lucy anymore. You sure? Yep. All I was worried about was you guys. I'll be fine as long as you are. Well, all right, then. I'm glad we had this talk, Gwen said. However, Gwen knew this was far from over. Just a moment ago, Lucy was completely broken up about this. There was no way anything had changed in the last few minutes. She's definitely lying. Lucy needed help. Getting over someone wasn't easy. If Gwen wanted to make things right, she and Ben were going to have to do something about it. We owe her that much. Gwen stayed over and hung out with Lucy for another hour or so after they had their talk. Gwen spent much of that time trying to evaluate how Lucy was feeling, but found it difficult. After she left, she went home and called Ben as soon as she could. "Hey, dweeb," Ben's voice came through the phone. "I was right," Gwen said, immediately taking her opportunity to say "I told you so." "So bats aren't really blind?" "No." "Well, that too. But I meant about Lucy." "Well, I didn't think Lucy was blind." "Ben." "What?" "About her having feelings for you, doofus." "Oh, right." Ben chuckled. "Well, can't say I'm surprised the babes can't stop falling for me." "Gwen. I know you're there, Gwen. I can hear you glaring." "Ben, you need to take this more seriously," Gwen chided. "And Lucy's a babe now, huh?" "I said babes," Ben insisted, dragging out the S to specify it was plural. "I was including you." Gwen sighed loudly, putting her hand to her forehead. "Fine. Sorry," Ben apologized half-heartedly. "Look, whatever. We need to do something about Lucy, okay? Let me tell you what just happened." Gwen gave Ben the short version of it, informing him of how she confronted Lucy and what she'd said in response. "So she's into you too, huh?" "Yes. That's what she told me." "Hold on, you just imagined me and her doing something dirty, didn't you?" "No. I told you to take this more seriously." Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't see what the big deal is." Gwen closed her eyes, leaning forward and pinching the bridge of her nose. "How on earth could you possibly not think this is a big deal?" "Well," Ben said. "From what you told me, it sounds like she's fine with things the way they are as long as we're happy. She's had other crushes besides us, and she's gotten over them, right? So let's just not bother her about it." "I know she may have said that," Gwen insisted. "But there's no way it's true. These kind of feelings, they're not something you can get over that easily." "What do you think we should do then?" Ben asked. "We need to show our appreciation for her more," Gwen said. "She probably misses us a lot now that we're dating. We should invite her to join us on our next summer trip, and just spend more time with her in general." "That sounds like a terrible idea," Ben said. "The more she's around us, the harder it's gonna be for her to get over us. So, what, we should just cut her out of our lives and totally neglect her until she hates us instead?" "That's not what I said." "Then what's your great idea, doofus?" "I don't know. Why don't we set her up with somebody? You know how Lucy is. She loves to love. Once she finds someone else, she'll get over us easy. I've already seen her turn a guy down." "So? You think she's just gonna turn everyone down?" "Until she gets over us, probably, yeah." "Well then what do you think we should do?" "I already told you." After she screamed, Gwen immediately flinched and looked over her shoulder at her closed bedroom door. Her parents might have been home, and this was definitely one of those conversations she didn't want them to overhear. Clearing her throat, she prepared to speak more quietly. "Ben," she said in a whisper. "Yeah," came his hesitant reply. "I'm sorry I yelled at you." "Me too." Gwen stared up at the ceiling. After taking a moment to reflect on what was happening, the situation just seemed so ridiculous. "Ben, what are we doing?" "Well, we're cousins, who are also dating, and we're trying to think of ways to help our other cousin stop being in love with both of us." "I'd say it's pretty simple," Ben summarized. Gwen couldn't help laughing at that. "Our lives are absurd." "Yeah." The alien stuff was more believable than this. After they both laughed at Ben's statement, Gwen cleared her throat again. "Well, I'm sure we'll think of something eventually. And whatever we decide, can we please still invite Lucy to join us on our summer trip?" "Are you sure?" Ben asked. "It still sounds like that would do the opposite of what we want." "Yes, I'm sure," Gwen declared. "The summer trip is special. I think it'll mean a lot to her. And we owe her a lot." "Yeah, I suppose we do," Ben agreed. "All right, we'll invite her. But if she refuses, we should let her." "Fine." And that's the ending of this part, everyone. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel, and also tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.